I didn't mean to, because last time it was terrible. Exactly. My hands were blue.
Can't win. Thank you.
Good evening, Rolling Meadows. Tonight, October 17th, 2017, 7:30 is the Committee of the Whole meeting. We have a full plate tonight, so Mr. Comstock, I guess we're going to let you start off with the business survey. To intro that, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor and City Council members. Obviously, the first one that we have, and the write-up is in there. Back early in spring, we contracted for a business survey. It was about 12 plus years since we did our past one. Obviously, where you're going to see tonight is somewhat of a new addition and somewhat of a change. The Economic Development Committee with Alderman Menjikis and Alderman Diastis actually received this first blush look at it. There were some additional comments and questions that came out of that Melanie has actually answered and is part of her presentation tonight. But part of what you see is really validating some of the stuff that we started in 2016 and then in 2017, specifically also shown in the 2018 budget regarding communications, new pieces, and also making sure that the comp plan is completed hopefully for next year, because that is an older plan that needs to be done. But obviously, when we got that information back on October 3rd for the October 4th Economic Development Committee meeting, one thing that came out of that pretty quickly was there was an issue of no trespassing and some other concerns that came out. So Chief Nowacki and the police department, specifically Officer Sayas, have been working on that, and they will continue working on that item. But again, some of these other items, some of the recommendations we've already started to work on and implementing. But again, I think when you look at it's good information validating some of the stuff that we started in 2016, 2017. One of the biggest points that does come up in the survey numerous times is about communication. What we started actually late last year with the Economic Development Committee was that they started making telephone calls to a lot of the new businesses. And I do appreciate the members who have done that. Obviously, some members have received some feedback, some have not. Alderman Menjikis has been very good at making a lot of those telephone calls to a lot of the new businesses. But again, one thing that we did find out, which was interesting and that was actually brought up during the Economic Development Committee, was that the survey actually shows that younger businesses seem to give a more favorable response, and some of the older businesses feel that they need to be reached out to, again, need a little additional contacts. And obviously with this survey and with the hiring of business advocate Martha Corner, she's already started going from older business to new businesses, working on that start of additional points. And then obviously with the survey, some of the streamlining that we've been talking about in community development that actually helps out in some of the additional parts. And again, from the survey, what you'll hear is that obviously the study does validate, as I said before, some of the other pieces, but there's still some additional work that needs to be done that staff will keep on using this. With that, I would bring up Melanie to go over the PowerPoint for people at home, and obviously the survey and the full document is actually in the packet. And again, Economic Development has already asked some questions. That's why it's a little more detailed and a little bit longer of a presentation. So with that, I turn it over to Melanie.
On the right?
Yep. Worst comes to worst, I'll put it in.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Melanie Santo-Stefano, Vicarious Productions, and I'm going to go through a bit of the history and how we got here, and then we'll get to the kind of going through the reports question by question, summarized. So we'll just begin. So initially, we came together, or I was hired by the city due to city leaders learning of some challenges relating to community development. Some processes were cited regarding businesses and organizations. An outside firm was chosen per the city council to get feedback and results in an outside perspective. The goal we had was determine where strengths or weaknesses were within city process, and with an ultimate goal to come forward with actionable recommendations based on feedback from the business survey, in addition to focus groups. And we first reported to the Economic Development Committee on the 3rd of October, and here we are tonight. So this is just a timeline broken down. So we were engaged in mid-April. We took April, May, and June to develop the website, beta test it. Communication collaterals were also created during this time, both digital and print. The website went live. It was live June 19th through July 28th, so it was a 5-week period. It was a bit of a challenge. It's summer and people are out on vacation, but we ended up getting what I think is a good result as far as participation. We also sent out press releases to the media, landed in the paper a few times, which helped to gain some notoriety and exposure to the survey. Postcards were also designed by us and sent out by a third party, a Rolling Meadows business, nearly 1,000. And we also had focus groups, 3 of them in early August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Our data collection went on between August and September of 2017. And again, Economic Development Committee on the 3rd, and here we are tonight. So the summary of the findings. So in total, we had 993 businesses respond to the survey. I'm sorry. Yeah, 993 businesses in Rolling Meadows, rather, and 148 respond to the survey. 29 of those actually also participated in focus groups. There was a bit of a crossover, so 20 of the focus group participants actually also completed the survey. So we had a little bit of redundancy there, but nothing of huge significance. In effect, you have 20 very engaged businesses who want to communicate with you, so that's actually a positive. Total participation in percentage was 14.9% response rate for the survey only. Combined between focus groups and surveys, 17.8%. And an overall total with no replication of 15.8, which is good, especially with time of year. I'd say that's 15% in a great time of year, maybe when everyone's burrowed in and has plenty of time to participate in surveys, would be standard. So you're above that based on the time of year. So kind of getting into the survey results more specifically. So as Barry mentioned, so in the first column, we have basically relatively smaller companies represented nearly 2/3, or a little over 2/3 rather, of the participation. So we broke out in numbers to the right just to give you a perspective. So basically, out of 148 businesses, 99 of them have between 1 and 10 employees. So you have smaller businesses, very engaged. And as Barry mentioned, many of the smaller are also newer. So you have nearly 40% are 5 years or less. So we have a really nice, good ground of businesses that are smaller with the potential to grow and are also newer, who are very engaged. 58% actually rent or lease their property. And home-based businesses, which was something that we were actually directed to kind of get a sense of. So 33% of businesses who are home-based have been in existence for between 16 and 20 years. Now, to look up to the home-based businesses between 0 and 5, 22% are newer as well. So as you see, your home-based business demographic is actually beginning to grow. Just something to kind of make note of. We also allowed the survey participants to remain anonymous if they felt they could be more open, not feeling constrained by being made aware of who they were. So 58% of the businesses who responded actually asked for that. The average length of time in Rolling Meadows from all respondents was 18.5 years, and for the home-based, 14.1. So this is just a breakdown of the types of businesses that participated in the survey. Your highest percentage was 26.6, and those are professional service providers, Those could be personal attorneys, hair and nail salons, anything that's a business-to-person or business-to-consumer business in an office setting. Another one to make note of, professional service providers, business-to-business, CPA, business attorneys, anything that would service a business to a business. Another one that was third, warehousing, industrial manufacturing. So you have a decent percentage representing that demographic. So one of the first questions, have you had contact with any of the city departments relating to your business or organization needs or issues? And they were instructed to check all that apply. So as you can see, the largest percentage of businesses had encounters with your community development department, which makes absolute sense. Police and fire followed pretty well. In addition to a pretty considerable group that has had no contact. And maybe that's because there's been no problems, or they haven't needed to, build on or have any sort of rehabilitation projects, which is something to make note of. So these are the issues that brought the end user, the business, or the organization to the different departments. So it just kind of tells you how and why they interact with the different departments. So over on the left, we have tax issues in the farmers market were basically administrative related. Below there, fire department, really the average things, fire on premises or inspections or fire extinguisher issues. We'll go over to the right for a second with Public Works. So they have a decent exposure as well in regards to all the Public Works related services, and then police response to the bottom. And as Barry mentioned, two of the issues with homeless individuals up near Gulf and Algonquin, which we'll get into a little bit later, have really already been addressed with the police department, in addition to issues with garbage. So those two were kind of deemed as able to address immediately, which they were. Community development is really going to be a large representation here, just because there's so many reasons that a business will engage with them, and they're listed there. I won't read them all to you, but permitting, occupancy, all of those things. So overall, positive experiences were reported with administration and Public Works. Police and fire generally had positives as well. There was a couple things, as we just mentioned, about police, fire inspections, but all in all, pretty positive. So community development, again, and really we believe mostly to the fact that businesses will be encountering them more opportunities. So, but that'll be detailed in the coming slides. All right, so strengths that we were able to pull out from business survey and focus groups. Talking about inspectors being friendly, quick, efficient, comments about the city manager being very helpful. Other comments saying that the departments as a whole respond very quickly and efficiently to any inquiries. Again, positive interactions, never had any problems. Even in Public Works coming out and dealing with an issue right away that had to do with water usage. So these are some areas where there could be the potential for some improvement. The top one is one that actually also has, the two little asterisks basically identify that the city was basically provided with this information already, and from what I understand, the new business advocate has already reached out to this business. It's a business that's been in Rolling Meadows for a considerable amount of time, and as Barry had mentioned, hadn't seen anyone from the city at all, and that was part of the concerns, but now they have, so that's been addressed. So community development, just as there were positive remarks in the previous slide, on the flip side, poor response time, disjointed information that basically isn't consistent between inspectors at times, presents a challenge for the business just trying to open up or get a permit. Comments about difficult for a new business getting off the ground, talking about abruptness, not explaining what actions are taken. And the last one is something that, is something just to be aware of, that these actions resulted in substantial financial and future opportunity losses, something that I'm sure the city wants to work to avoid. Okay, so the next question. Did you have a good understanding of the expectations of the city? Any issues you had to address after contact with departments? So in all, nearly 80% said yes, they had a good understanding. So obviously that's very strong. Under 20% said no. Comments are summarized below. Some of the respondents said they needed a better understanding of regulations, so there's at least something to work off of as far as making sure that those are very clear in all communications. Sorry. Community development, inconsistent. There is, again, contact with the city seems adversarial, not collaborative. Then on the opposite side, good relationship, good working relationship. And the last one, no contact at all. So responses and questions. So a strong majority, 41%, stated they chose Rolling Meadows to locate there due to basically geography and transportation. So location. Individuals who stated they reside in Rolling Meadows came up after that in order of ranking. And the reason for locating the city due to city services, support services, was 6%. So did they believe the city appreciated their business being here? 51% said yes, very strong. The not sure and the no equal about 49%. So it seems that, though it's a not sure, if you're not sure, so it seems about even. I think there'd be probably a goal to convert those not sures into yes. So these are comments, and again, we actually, instead of trying to curate the respondents' responses, we actually, in many cases, just quoted them directly to really convey their exact words to you. So we have some feedback included positive or negatives about the city experiences as a whole. There are also critical and then neutral reactions that provide insight into areas of potential improvement. More than 1/3 stated they have not ever had contact. 2 of the respondents had businesses in the city for 25 and 40 years and stated that they have not ever encountered the city representatives over all of those years. Others expressed sentiments that they feel the city does not know about them or care to know about them because they're too small. Additional feedback included reports of being treated in a negative way, that the relationship can be adversarial at times, allowing them, that the city was actually just being kind and allowing them to be here. So future plans and challenges, which is a good insight as far as what these businesses in your city are looking for. The largest one was trying to find workforce talent. A benefit is you have Department of Employment Security very, very close by. Is it in Rolling Meadows? Off of Algonquin? Or right nearby?
It's right there.
Arlington. Second was outgrowing their current location, renovations needed. That information as well has already been communicated to the city. We actually dug in further and were able to extract out the names and contact information of the businesses that are going to be growing and need room or need to be dealing with the space they currently have. That information is with the business advocate. So again, another opportunity to do that reach out to ensure that those businesses are engaged with in order to promote them staying here and helping them to grow. The next one from there, property taxes. It's a problem all over Cook County, so I don't think that's specific to Rolling Meadows. And again, the regional local economy, just being in the state of Illinois is a challenge right now. So survey questions and responses. Example of future plans and challenges. So parking was cited by several of the respondents, so that's more of a summary statement. Support from the city that is fair and unbiased. We already addressed Gulf and Algonquin challenges, which have been transferred over to the police department. Property taxes and economy, again. Public transportation. So that, at least for a few of the respondents, said that impacts their recruitment and retention efforts. So that might be something to think about. And then other businesses talking about downsizing due to the economy. Again, out of the control of Rolling Meadows and more just a sign of our times, unfortunately. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? Okay. All right, survey responses and questions. Do you have plans to expand your business, utilizing more space, hiring additional employees in the next 1 to 5 years? So 50% said yes, very positive. And again, the businesses that wanted or didn't ask to remain anonymous have actually been communicated over to the business advocate, so that's definitely an opportunity. Here we asked what challenges within the city of Rolling Meadows, more just kind of situational, and the top ones really were street configurations, entrances and exits to businesses, the permit process, and vacant spots were the top 3 cited as what they saw as challenges. Other feedback, criticisms and constructive feedback, not all of it negative. I think a lot of good suggestions came out of the focus groups. Having them, just on a side note, was a really good opportunity and something that you might consider continuing in some way, shape, or fashion to just get businesses in front of individuals that can communicate directly with them. You have an interested and engaged business community, and our suggestion would be to keep that relationship open and ongoing. Respondents said there didn't seem to be any sense of urgency to fix issues such as poor curb appeal, which was brought up a number of times, our physical presentation of the city, as well as how it presents itself digitally and online and through overall communications, whether those be brochures, collaterals, anything that someone could grab and take away. Other examples about the aesthetics, the curb appeal included the gateway signs, calling them outdated, maybe up for consider doing a little freshen up on those. And Barry mentioned too about an economic development plan that was in the works. A number of respondents said that there doesn't seem to be any sort of master plan at the moment with a cohesive vision. Other suggestions were developing a downtown center. A lot of residents in the suburbs love a downtown. Reviewing the economic development efforts for the city to better sell itself through efforts of ongoing and professional communications, and transforming Rolling Meadows of Chamber of Commerce to make it stronger and more effective for its members in order to strengthen the overall business community. So the next question related to how can the city be more business friendly? What needs to change or be improved or provided? So business resources and opportunities information was the highest at nearly 30%. I find this a lot. We work with a few chambers of commerce and other municipalities, and businesses just want the opportunity to learn. So if that relationship continues in some way, providing resources where businesses are able to find education and other ways that they can continue to grow. Incentive programs for growth, possibly interest-free loans, grants, or other economic development incentive programs. Municipalities in the area are doing facade improvements where there's some sort of cost-sharing model, or even a sales tax sharing model where businesses come in and improve the property. They do a property tax share, and they can actually reimburse the business back for their investment in a building that needs to be redeveloped. Those are just a couple of examples that I know of firsthand from different clients of ours. Other suggestions from participants. You have a number of businesses that want regular, unbiased contact with the city. Again, reference to the downtown needing some sort of facelift. There was mention of there's a lot of concrete, wanting warmer materials, brick, something that is more inviting, which the opinion is that it would create more business opportunities, creating an environment that is nicer to look at. Again, the downtown area came up, in addition to reaching out to area schools for hiring and training. Since if you go back to the slide with your largest percentage of businesses having a challenge finding the right workforce, there's a number of junior colleges, even high schools that have trade programs that partnerships could be made. Harper College is one of them. I'm aware of a couple different municipalities that work with them already. So now we're here to the recommendation. So part of our promise was to not only put together the responses of the survey, but also provide some potential solutions for different challenges that were brought up. So just go through them. There was substantial feedback about the lack of consistency between departments relating to information. So respondents would say that they talked to one department, they got this story, another department, they got another, and a third, they got another. And that is probably the biggest challenge a business can get, is not understanding the moving target. So the city could consider having an all-city department training, retraining, making everybody aware of what the current information that needs to be conveyed to the stakeholder is, so everyone is on the same page. 2, repeated and substantial complaints about community development inspectors. Due to the high percentage of this being reported, the consideration is to actually provide a complete retraining. This is your first line where you have businesses who are wanting to do things that really do indicate growth, and they're not satisfied. So ensuring that everyone is educated, re-educated on process. A secondary was concerns about follow-up. Either slow to no follow-up. So even putting a process in place where a certain response time should be met, is required to be met, and it should be monitored, at least for a period of time. 3, due to long-standing businesses reporting they have not ever encountered the city. And again, talking with councilmen about, being able to physically walk the district and visit with every business might not be feasible, but there are other communication channels that can at least reach them. On a side note, when we did the business reach out, the Chamber of Commerce was extremely helpful in gathering some of the contact information for your businesses. So we really pulled together this group of 997, including email addresses, and as the communications continue to grow, you can continue that, and it is very inexpensive to create a mass email distribution to just reach out to your businesses. There's a considerable amount already, and those can continue to be collected, and find lower cost ways to reach out to your community just to make them feel acknowledged. A strong point of contention was described as a complete lack of communication from the city. So again, and as Barry had mentioned, there are already plans in place to increase your communication channels. I'd highly suggest the focus groups. We had, nearly 30 participants, but relative to the sample, it's strong. And you have a lot of smart business and organizational leaders that want to be part of solutions. One of the suggestions was, or one of the statements from a few of the respondents is, I'd serve on a committee and volunteer my time. It's that important to me. This is my town. Individuals, especially that live here and work here for long periods of time, have a great perspective. So to tap into that knowledge and background is important. Many respondents said they would like to be partnered with the city. So again, along that line, on events, the farmers market is a great start. I know that businesses that are involved already are very happy that that's an opportunity, but possibly figuring out other ways that there could be partnerships where even tapping into the Chamber of Commerce, though, just to be careful, the Chamber of Commerce is a paid organization, and sometimes that would put off a business that maybe can't make that investment right now to join. So just to be aware of the fact that any offering should be made available to the entire business community, whether or not they're members of the Chamber of Commerce. 6, reach out to businesses that stated they would be expanding. So that is already happening. As we explained earlier, half of the businesses that responded said they have plans to do that. Strong feedback related to the cityscape being cold, desolate, and having low curb appeal. That could either within the city or commissioning a study just to see what can be done to warm up the aesthetics to make it more inviting for businesses and for people. Younger, newer businesses report feeling too small to be bothered with, that they don't matter. We have, I would say, an overwhelming majority of small businesses did not want to be anonymous, so they made themselves known. That list can be communicated to the business advocate in her reach out to business, and you have a group right there that says, we're too small, no one wants to know us, and they can be pleasantly surprised and reached out to, and that opinion can change. Substantial comments about the lack of vision or a master plan relating to economic development, efforts that have been cohesive and long-term. We went over that. You said that you are addressing that next year, so that is on your horizon. Concerns are the process and fairness of monthly adjudication meetings. So this actually came up in focus groups specifically, that at least the impression is that there are a number of people where English is not their first language having violations, and the potential for ensuring that communications are very clear to people who English is not their first language. Additionally, reviewing whether or not an attorney is required during these meetings. A number of the businesses communicate it's a very large expense for them in addition to whatever fines they have to deal with. Keeping capital within a small business is number one, a really good goal. So overall, really in the entire business survey, participants, in addition to the focus groups, it really does go back to communication. There was certainly positive feedback, and I don't want to pretend that isn't there as well. I think it's easy to hear the negative, but there was a lot of positive feedback as well. But for the negatives, communication, there are so many channels right now, some of which the city is using, not all. I would investigate being in every channel you can be. Your residents and your businesses are in all different places. There's a number of social media channels. There are news channels. There are opportunities to self-publish to the local media sites. There are email communications. There are print communications. Just ensure that the city is taking advantage of any and all ways to engage. I think the overall message really was, we want you to communicate with us more and better and provide us with accurate information so we can do what we need to do to thrive in your community. So, and then I'll just say to sum it up that I know a report like this can be uncomfortable to hear sometimes when people are upset. It wasn't all bad. I feel all in all, the people that I met and shook hands with and spent time with want to stay here. They want to be heard. Through this survey, I believe they have been heard, and now you have an opportunity to address them and understand their challenges as businesses, especially these young businesses that are anxious to survive and stay. In addition to, one of the things I failed to mention was these long-standing businesses. So you have businesses that have been here 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, one even 63 years. Possibly coming up with some sort of program to recognize that. That's a lot of contribution to your local economy. It was something that I would say any business over 20 years mentioned that. So coming up with some sort of recognition, even if it's as a group, even if it's as a some sort of group recognition at a city council meeting, just to say thank you. It really is just that, feeling acknowledged. The small business owners trying to survive. This economy was brought up by these business owners. I'm a business owner. It is rough to continue to survive in this economy. So anything that the city can do to say, we see you, we know you, we want to engage with you, you're important to us, is something that I think could win over a lot of the businesses that participated in this survey. And that's the report. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, first I want to thank you.
Sorry, I'm coming on with a cold. I'm really sorry.
Do you have water there? You okay?
I don't. I'm fine. I'll be
Okay.
fine. Thanks.
First off, I want to thank you. It's been a 6-month effort. I just want to assure everyone in the city that this is reaching out to the business community, but this is just a first step. It's not something that we have done in a while. It's a first step in increasing the communication to the city, the citizens, to let them know where we're going. And I really liked the idea about we need to do some more recognition to some of our long-term businesses that have been here. So I think it's really great. And again, this is just the first step forward, and we're going to push to go forward even more. Questions from the council? Mr. Banger.
Thank you. After reading this, after hearing this, is there a baton that is actually being handed off? Specifically, I was hearing about these focus groups. Is that something where these groups that have been established are going to be possibly recalled, as she suggested, for future sit-downs and exploring more questions?
At this point in time, no, and some of those individuals just wanted to meet with Melanie and her firm, and did not want their names published, who actually showed up, so we're not pushing for that. But again, when you're talking about a baton, and that's what I referred to back at the fiscal year 2018 budget, we're working on some of the stuff now, some of the things that you know that we've been pushing from 2016, 2017, and 2018, but as we've heard, and the biggest baton is dealing with some of those things that we can do immediately and some of those that really need the communication pieces, and that's why in the proposed fiscal year 2018, there is communication pieces, and there are some ideas and thoughts that we have, and actually that's one thing that the business advocate, Martha Kerner, is going to be working on with some of the new information, some of the new pamphlets, some of the new ideas that we have, but that's also part of, as I said, you're working from the top and the bottom, making sure that people feel participant. And one thing that you know about that we mentioned in 2017 that hopefully will be kicked off in 2018 really is that business expo. And that is a business to business, but a business to resident for people to be out there. And that's something that obviously Alderman Hill, who's not here, obviously he had some other thoughts, and we know what his thoughts were on that too, but those are all part of those communication pieces that we're hoping. And obviously the first year that we put on the Business Expo, hopefully it gets enough information out there that people, but the next year and growing. And the best example of that is that with community events this year, when we did the Taste of Rolling Meadows, look how many restaurants we actually had participate in that for the first time. The word's already out, so hopefully this year in 2018, when we do that, there will actually be even more businesses that want to participate in that one.
And also, too, I can tell you, not all of the focus group participants wanted to remain anonymous. Many of them want to be very involved, including volunteering to be on business or organizational committees to help kind of do a focus back to businesses and organizations. So I can provide a list of those that did not want to remain anonymous and would like to engage with the city.
Okay,
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Further comment? Mr. Budman?
I saw in your report a couple of times the word unbiased. Was that a surprise to you?
Is that a trick question?
Nick?
No, it's not surprising. And this isn't unique to Rolling Meadows. If you just think of this situation, just take community development, right? This is a person who is coming in to say, no, you're not doing this right. And he or she could be right that they're not doing it right. And a business person doesn't necessarily want to hear that because they want their project to move forward. So could that be perceived as biased, unbiased? Certainly. I mean, it's kind of a challenging situation. So no, I'm not surprised. It did come up a little more often than I thought it would. So that is something to think about, which is why I recommended really kind of drilling down on the inspectors and making sure everyone has the same information, because that is part of the challenge too. And being biased could be, someone having this information and that information could simply be two people in a silo, and one thinking this is it and one thinking this is it, so it could be perceived as bias when it isn't. So no, I'm not shocked or surprised, but it is something, it's an indication that now you have to address that potential issue with.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Alderman?
I have a couple of questions. Thank you for the amount of data and creating this baseline of
It's a lot. I try not to make it boring.
Right? But I also found valuable the recommendations and how to apply those going forward. And so Alderman Bandra hit kind of the nail on the head. Thank you for that, with the key word of baton and passing of the baton. So a couple questions I've been getting from the residents in the Fourth Ward primarily is the business advisor and their ability in terms of key performance indicators moving forward to quantify and qualify their role to continue to take this data that you've collected and see it increase or change gears when it's negative and should be more positive. Mm-hmm. And this isn't to put the business advisor on the chopping block, but it's to better understand their role and have a collective understanding, so collaboratively we can work together as a common group to go ahead and make sure that we're advocating and being the proper conduit. So are there KPIs or key performance indicators established going forward for the business advisor so we can make sure that there's a quantifier and qualifier to the performance?
I think that would be Mr. Crumstock, because that person reports directly to Mr. Crumstock, so.
Yes, just like anything else, there are goals and objectives for all personnel, and that is one of the things that we do watch.
So are there metrics in place?
There are, again, it's personnel and their goals and overall items that would be monitored for that person.
I think at this time, because we're looking at the business survey and we're moving to a different direction, if you wish to have a side conversation with Mr. Crumstock, and we can come back with that. But tonight we're here to deal with the business survey overall and what it has to do with the city. Any other questions?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I understand that we have a wild road show from the director of the library.
I don't know if you want to call
And he's here with his entourage. And we thank all of them for serving on the library board. Thank you very much.
entourage.
It's another thing.
Well, the rest of the presentation will be factual, so I'll leave that, but thank you for helping me.
You know what? We do have to have a little sense of humor
I
at budget
know,
time.
I know. Yes, librarians don't normally get invited to talk about budgets, so we are happy to be here, and very happy that all the support that we've gotten from the city. So I know that you've got a busy schedule, so I'll dive right in. This first slide that you see up here indicates what our expenditure history is going back over 16 budgets. And what you can see there is there's a big increase this year because we did an expansion, the first one in about 30 years. That increase was paid in large part because we used our reserves. There are actually two parts to the expansion. We had money to do one, and our board is very conservative financially and didn't want to issue debt, so we did the one, and now we're going to take a year to rest and to build up reserves and start at the next one. So again, that one indicates that we put in about $540,000 of reserve money to help pay for that the expansion. And this is the history over the same period of our library levy increases. And this year, the increase we're looking at for next year is 3.5%. And just kind of for perspective, you might want to notice that over that 16-year period, about a quarter of the years we were under 1%. So we've tried to be very responsible with the levy increases. We generally are looking at trying to build reserves, then spend the money out thoughtfully, and then move on to the next project. Now, if you look at over the course of that period, we've had 3 large projects, many smaller capital projects, but a youth services renovation, a replacement of a 28-year-old air conditioning unit, chiller unit, and then the West Wing expansion. So it was during that time that we were able to deliver levy increases that have stayed under 5% for the past 9 years. Well, one of the ways to do this, since about 72% of our budget involves personnel at some level, is to keep a hold of your staffing. And I think the takeaway on this slide is that when we've done reorganizations, they have not been gimmicks. We haven't reduced by a few percent one year and then increased by twice that amount the next year. So whenever we've done a staff reduction, it's been something that we've done thoughtfully and it's been sustainable. And I'll say one of the things I'm especially proud of our staff on is that we've been able to do some things that are a little bit different. For instance, back in 2002, we looked at it and we decided one of the things that we can start doing is everybody can shelve books. We don't have shelvers. We're one of the libraries that does not have any shelvers at all. So we all shelve the books. The management team shelves the books, I shelve the books, and there's really no reason why librarians can't touch the books. So that's been good for us to do that. We also looked at increases in questions involving reference questions and help with computers. And so about 2010, we came to a crossroads where we could have increased staffing by hiring more reference librarians. And what we decided to do instead was go ahead and create roamers from the staff that we have. And things you need for security in a library is you need eyes and ears on the floor. And if you also have the ability to help people out in finding their books or answering their questions, so much the better. So we decided at that point we really didn't need security guards. We also get a lot of support from the police, and they are there lickety-split if we need them. And so that was a time where we decided we would create roamers. So on any given night, if the pressure of questions and patrons moves from the reference desk to youth services, rather than hiring more people at each desk, we have a roamer that can move between the desks. And when they're not helping out at the desks, they're moving through the building, and that helps give us some additional security. So what that has done is it allowed us to have a very predictable and sustainable set of personnel expenditures. One of the other things that's a little different about the way we do things is that everybody gets the same pay rate increases, and that means everybody. That's the management team, that's the director, that's all the folks working in the library. We all have the same increase, and no bonuses, no anniversary expenses, no additional extras at all. And what we looked at is that our goal is to try to stay 33% ahead of projected local inflation. So what we do is we look at 3 different national services and we coordinate it to the local inflation rate. And then we add 33% to that, and that is what the pay rate increase is for everybody. That allows us to go ahead and keep the increases here pretty gentle. Okay, materials expenses. I'll go over this. I know some of you have heard this before, but I know some of you are new. We are a member of a library system, the Reaching Across Illinois Library System, RAILS. You can insert laughter here. Librarians love acronyms. But one of the things that you have to do to have membership in RAILS is that you have to spend at least 12% of your non-capital, non-local area network, non-reserve budget on materials. Now, we're a library that's known as a mature library, in that all of our bookshelves are full. And so when a box of books comes in, a box has to go out. So the 12% rule for us, which varies between $400,000 and maybe $450,000, is really very adequate for us. Population has not grown greatly in Rolling Meadows, and we have a very, very strong item per capita count, even compared to some of our much bigger neighbors. So we've got a good collection, and it's also fresh. We're able to keep the books coming in that are the new books. Now, the things that we get for being in the system are partly also monetary and partly service. For instance, if we weren't in the system, you wouldn't have reciprocal borrowing. So right now you can use your Rolling Meadows card, go to any of the libraries in Illinois, and you can check out books. There are some things that they can protect if they have something that's called a developing collection that they're just starting. They can protect those items out, but those are very few. So one is we get reciprocal borrowing by being part of the system. The other thing is we get a per capita grant from the state, which has, I will say, dwindled over the years. It wasn't that many years ago where it was about $30,000 a year. Now it's down to about $18,000. But you know what? It helps. So that's a good thing for us as well. So those are some of the benefits of being in a library system. What you see there, now it looks like there's a dip at the very end there, 2017 and 18. 2017 we're not done with yet. And I want to say that historically, we always end up spending more than 12% of that budget on materials. And the reason is that by the time the year comes to the fourth quarter, if we've been able to crush out some savings anywhere else in the budget, the things we spend the money on in that last quarter are going to be additional materials for patrons, because that's a direct benefit, and also consumables. So things like toner, paper, toilet paper, paper towels, anything that we know that we're going to have, light bulbs that we're going to have to consume. And normally that pushes us up so that by the time I come back here next year, I think you're going to see that last one for 2017 is going to be above the number that we actually budgeted. It always is. And the reason that the 2018 looks a little lower is because that's just the 12%. Normally, we're closer to 13 or 14% by the time the year is done. Okay. All right. Well, one of the areas of growth, because we can't add a lot of shelf space for print materials, getting more and more e-media, e-books, e-audio, audiobooks, and there are several flavors of that. There's the stuff that we own, and that's what that chart shows, is that we've been building pretty rapidly since 2010. There was a little time there where nobody was sure what was going to be the format that everybody was going to adopt, and therefore we didn't want to go in too fast because you don't want to end up with the equivalent of 8-track tapes. So we bought those, but we also, if you look at the little insert box there, we also went ahead and joined a consortium. Now, the good thing about the consortium is, although we now have about 3,000 items that we own, and those are restricted just to our patrons, our patrons have access to another 28,000 items. But you got to wait in line because there are a number of libraries that are sharing those. So the waits for those can be a little bit longer. But for 2015 to 16, that jump was about 5% as far as the items that we own. And it pays off in circulation. There's about a 9% jump in e-material circulation. And I see that as a continuing trend, and we're going to continue to put money into it. This is about where somebody always says, well, does this mean there won't be any more books? And gosh, no, that's not the case. In fact, I'm beginning to think some people are looking at these books as sort of interesting novelties. They don't have to be recharged. You can hold them. Certainly if they have pictures or maps or diagrams, it's a little easier to deal with it in the print version. But I will say it is awfully convenient to have a toolbox that includes not only the print materials, but also the non-print. I mean, if you're traveling and you can carry 300 or 400 books on your phone, that's not a bad thing. So what we try to do is make sure that we have enough in the toolbox that people can choose how they learn best. Some people learn best with ebooks, some people with print, and some people do both, and that's great. So the other thing is I have to tell you, picture books for kids. I don't think ebooks are ever going to replace those. I mean, we're happy to send them out. You can hold them. Lucia's here, head of youth services. Sometimes they come back with bite marks in them, and that's okay too. We'll replace the book if we have to, but kids with picture books, they still tend to want to have a book that they can hold and look at. So I don't think anything's going away anytime soon. All right, well, where does our budget come from? And this is the tale of two very odd years. 2017 is not typical at all. 2018 is typical. Normally, our property taxes account for 96% of our budget, and only about 4% of other things. However, in 2017, as I mentioned before, we threw in $540,000 of our reserves to do that building expansion. So the numbers got all skewed for this year, for 2017. You may wonder what all these other things are, and they are things like PPRT, which I always butcher this. Maybe, Barry, you might be able to do it better.
Personal property.
Personal property replacement tax, which is sort of like the corporate income tax.
Yep.
Can I get away with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good enough for now.
Even Jim is saying okay to that. All right. Per capita grant, I mentioned. Interest income at the library. Fines and fees. Now, it's interesting. Fines and fees are going down. Does anybody know why? E-books never come back late.
Yeah.
They just go poof and they're gone. So it's some of our success is costing us money in other places, but that's okay. That's a good place to spend money. Staff vending machine. Now the income on the staff vending machine, I should mention. Larry Buskey many years ago jumped me on this one. We don't sell at that vending machine to the public. That vending machine is just for staff, and the proceeds go to, if one of our staff members is in the hospital for some reason, we use those monies to buy them flowers or something. So it's not a lot of money, but that's what that one does. But now we have a patron vending machine in the garden lounge. And so we're hoping that we'll make some money off of that. But we're learning all sorts of things that we didn't know. I was interested to see the presentation on local businesses because that's hard work. Who would have guessed that bottled water is the big thing that we sell? I mean, we put that in as an afterthought amongst all the other interesting things. Bottled water and Rice Krispie candies. That's my suggestion for everybody here. The Friends of the Library donate $20,000 to us every year or more from their book sales, and that helps to support some of our book clubs, movies. A lot of furniture was paid for by the Friends, and they keep doing that for us. So if you go to the next page, what you'll see then is the dollar breakdowns. Again, remember that 2017, that's because we used $540,000 of our own reserves. So that $134,000 for 2018 is much more in keeping with what we actually see. Okay. What that leaves us with is what is our property tax going to be and what does it break down to on a per capita basis as an increase? It's about $1.97. So I guess the best way to say it is that that's less than most places where you can buy a cup of coffee, and a lot less than some places, and I won't mention product names. But it's important for us to make sure that we carry out all these capital projects, do it over a long number of years, and make it so it is not burdensome on our residents. And so that's why we've worked hard to keep those numbers down. All right. Well, we're resting up this year, and what's happening in 2019? We're trying to rebuild our reserves, because when we first came here, we had gotten the zoning variance and gotten everything ready to go for 2 parts of a renovation, but we found out we didn't have the money for 2 parts of the renovation, so we just deferred it. The second part is this north expansion. And the picture you see there is what you would see if you walked to our garage and opened the door. Right now, those are the books for the book sale. And they occupy about a little over half of the garage. You might notice that those are stacked about 10 or 11 cases high. Because with a big book sale, we could be talking about 350 to 400 cases of books. We've got some board members back here that actually pack those boxes, so they know firsthand what goes on. I have to tell you, stacking cases of books that high is not healthy. And so we need to do something about that, because we also need to use our garage to store things like when we can buy consumables and things like that. So this was the next thing, is to add about a little over 1,000 square feet onto the north side of the building that would allow us to take all those books in there and maybe only stack them 5 or 6 cases high, which we hope will reduce the wear and tear on the staff and even the director. Also, it would allow us to go ahead and stockpile materials that we need to stockpile. There's an elevation you can see down there, sort of at the bottom left, you can see what we're filling in. Right now, there's a concrete slab there. So we're going to be losing some windows. We might try to put some skylights in there for the staff offices that are going to be next to that space. We have not gotten specific design work done with the architectural firm yet, but we're hoping that we can drive down the cost a little bit. We are going to have to add in a replacement on our fire alarm panel, and that's going to add a little bit of additional money. We're thinking right now that you may be looking at total project cost $350,000, but we think we can drive that down a little bit. I'm happy to say we drove it down on the project I talked to you about last year. We were able to come in with the west expansion under budget and on time, and I'm hoping that we can do that with this one too. Well, I can't really end here without saying thanks. You all know what you did, certainly with the City Council and with Barry to help us with the permitting and all of the support you've given. Every one of your department directors back here, and I mean every one of them, contributed to getting that project done over there and helping us save money. It really kind of felt at times like an old-fashioned barn raising. So whenever we had an issue or a problem, we called for help. It came right away. And I won't go through what everybody did, but I'll be glad to talk your ears off about it later. But they all have helped us a bunch. Now, with that, I will stop and ask you if you have some questions.
No, I just have some couple of comments. I was there for the grand opening. I thank you for the tours as I went through the library. Was going under construction.
Yeah.
But you left one part out there. You said on time, under budget, but you didn't say with no debt. Which,
right.
We love you so much. We'd love to send you to Springfield, but we're going to keep you with the library board up here because you guys did just an awesome job. I mean,
Thank you.
It's just amazing what goes on in that library. Those are my comments. Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Krumstock.
I don't have a question, but a continuation to the presentation that was actually out here. And many on the council have heard me say this, and actually many residents. We really do appreciate our baby brother, our library. We have a very nice time being over there, and they come over here, especially when Dave sends something back and he says, baby brother, the library has sent you something. But I want to reiterate just a few things. Obviously, thank you to the city council for obviously waiving the fees and the permits that we actually did for the library. And again, that's helping out our baby brother and obviously some of the other pieces. And obviously, staff was there a lot, and Dave was very passionate about this project, and even during rainstorms when there were leaks, and he was there on weekends and other periods of time. And it goes back to obviously our liaison from the council who sits there and has heard a lot of the stories about it, but it's greatly appreciated when a project comes in and everybody feels comfortable, and it goes back to Dave and his staff. But we also want to reiterate something that he mentioned, and it goes back to all those boxes of books that you saw. The Friends of the Library has their next book sale on November 17th through the 19th. So if you can make it to there, that would be greatly appreciated to clean out another area. And as a person who does like books, they usually do see me there for a little bit. But again, it's greatly appreciated with all that they have set up to do. And Obviously, with the new lighted area and the open area, it really does help them. And it also opens up a lot of the communication that we have with the library for some public safety items that we have with all the glass and open walls. And then the final idea and comment that I'll actually say, and this goes back to something that Alderman Gallo just showed me, when we're talking about e-books, he's actually using a different app than I have, but it's called Overdrive. And that's something that I think a lot of people should know about, because there are different apps. And obviously, if you're going to e-books, it's something just to be aware of. And I know he's using Overdrive. I use a different one. But again, the good thing about ebooks is it comes to you and then it's gone. But just like me, I also don't always have time to finish things, so sometimes the paperback goes a long way. So with that, those are my additional comments. And again, thank you for Dave dealing with Melissa and I a lot more. And we do welcome their new HR director, Mrs. Troy, and we hope it's a long, happy relationship with that as it continues going on too.
Thank you. Anyone else? I guess you can either go home and read a good book or watch the Cubs game. Your choice.
I might do both.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Just need to change the next PowerPoint, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have to ask a question of the audience. There is a couple of sign-ins. Mr. Lynch, I gather it's going to be the city budget that you're going to speak about, and Patty Callahan, the city budget also? Okay, thank you.
So we're ready.
Are we on?
We're
ready?
on. We're all ready now.
Okay, is Melissa, you're taking the lead here?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, we are continuing the fiscal year proposed 2018 budget discussion, and what we wanted to do is kick it off with a PowerPoint and turn it over to City Council for further review and discussion. But a couple things here. When you look at the two photos that are sitting up there, the Gallagher Insurance Building, and then also the Farmers Market, it really says a lot where the city has come in the last couple of years. The Gallagher Insurance Building obviously is a high point in the last year or so. And then, of course, with the farmers markets kicking off so many of the community events. And that really is a highlight to the proposed budget. So the budget calendar and process begins really in January each year. And we're not going to summarize too much other than the fact that it does begin in January and we continue it all the way through the spring months with a budget parameter discussion with City Council. In August every year, we present the capital improvements plan to the City Council and then also the proposed budget. After the proposed budget is completed and presented to the City Council, we then sit down one-on-one with the City Council to discuss the budget. We did that with each City Council member and the mayor. And then also we did follow up with additional meetings with additional questions. The first public hearing for the city tax levy and the library tax levy was held on September 26th, so the City Council meeting. And the public hearing for the city's budget and library's budget took place at the October 10th City Council meeting. Those are requirements by state statute, and we are in compliance with that. Thank you. And the City Council approved the water, sewer, and stormwater rate ordinances for the 2018 budget at the October 10th Council meeting. One of the things that we're very pleased with over the last couple of years is that we've presented our budget to the Government Finance Officers Association, and we have been awarded with the City Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. It is a nationally recognized award, and we're very pleased that we have received this award. It is something that our city's auditors and our credit rating agencies look at this as a favorable achievement. And we intend to also submit this for 2018 as well. A couple highlights for the proposed budget as an overall. The city does continue to complete capital projects. That is the core of what many of the funds that we are presenting in the budget in capital projects. And of course, our capital improvements plan, as a plug to our city's website, we do have a transparency tab. And within that tab, you will also find not only the capital improvements plan, but you're going to also find budgets, not just for this year, but several years going back, and many other items within the transparency tab on the city's website. Overall, for the proposed budget, we focus on the general fund in so many ways because that is our largest operating fund. The general fund, when the proposed budget was delivered, is in parameters at 27.6% for fund balance. When we just adopted the resolution by City Council at the last City Council meeting, the fund balance policy now shows 23.6% after the transfer to the newly created Fire Stations Fund for the land for the Fire Stations Fund parcel. The general fund does have moderate revenue changes for certain line items, but overall, revenue changes are about the same as 2017. The year-over-year change in revenues is about $1 million. It's about 3%, primarily due to the property tax levy. Now, this budget does include some of the state of Illinois changes that have impacted the budget. We have incorporated that within the budget itself. The general fund's expenditures year over year are moderate in terms of the percentage. It's about a 1% change year over year, or about $456,000. And this is primarily due to fire and police pensions. And as City Manager Barry Crumstock has mentioned, the city really is working on economic development activities and enhancing community events, which does impact the overall picture and feel and look for the city. Within the city's proposed budget, there are many items that speak to those two items in particular. The property tax levy change deals with funding pensions, making sure that our commitment to funding roads is there, and also keeping the general fund on a financially prudent track. As I mentioned, the state's budget impact really has been incorporated within this budget, and we're making sure we're monitoring as we move along. Overall, expenditures are really continued at relatively low levels and are trending in line with revenues. And because we have fund balance policies, we're making sure that we're adhering to them. So for our general fund, our refuse fund, our 911 fund, we do also follow those policies. There are some remaining dates on the budget planning calendar for year end. Obviously, next City Council meeting, October 24th, we have some ordinances that are up for first reading. Or second reading. And then we have November 14th for our first reading on the tax levy, and then second reading and for the tax levy at November 28th with a adoption of the budget and the acceptance of the library's budget. Staff will be, at the end of this discussion, requesting to remove the November 21st city budget discussion at the November 21st COW. And really this is done so that we can turn our attention to looking at the utility rate study, developing some bond scenarios, looking at the final budget document, and all the filings that we have to do, which are many with the state of Illinois and other areas. Moving now to looking at the property tax, we have some slides to show. This really kind of gives the overall picture. This slide here shows the dollar. And if you think about your tax dollar, 15 cents out of each tax dollar is to the city, and with a large proportionate share over to the schools. So that little tiny slice in yellow there, that's the property tax levy to the city. This is a slide that we always like to keep. It is a lot of this information, or most of this information, is in our budget document that can be found online under our transparency tab for the city of Rolling Meadows. But this is our outstanding debt service, with the majority of our debt maturing in 2017, with two other items maturing in 2018, and the largest bond going out to 2023, which is paid by our general fund. The proposed property tax levy, we have had a public hearing on that. Property tax levy, the year-over-year dollar change is $641,000 with a 4.8% year-over-year increase. And that change really is something that is comparable for the last several years, keeping it under about 5%. And the chart next to it will show you the actual line item distribution by dollar and percentage, with about 78% really supporting our public safety efforts for police and fire. Not only pensions, but police and fire protection, critical core services for the city. And we've worked very hard to make sure that we're making sure that these year-over-year changes are as low as possible. What is the property tax 4.8% related to? Well, a third of it is pensions, police and fire primarily. Police and fire protection, as mentioned, those are critical core services for the city. The annual street program, more investment into roads, public works operations, and 911, and you can see the breakdown in that chart. Always a question, and it's a very important question, is what's the average property tax levy increase? As Dave Ruff from the library mentioned, they have $1.97 as far as an average tax increase. Well, for the city, we're much, much larger. $54.36 is the average property tax increase. Now, when you think about that 15 cents of each dollar to the city, about $1,119 is from each property tax bill if you have a $7,000 property tax bill. So it's something to remember that the year-over-year change as far as an increase for an average is about $54. And what we've done here is just show you dollar by dollar that change, levied items redistributed. This is a fund balance summary chart. It is in our proposed budget. It's a good one because it does show you the estimated beginning fund balance for January 2018, about $19 million, which is across all funds. We're doing a lot of capital, and when you see those capital outlays within the capital improvements plan, you see the reason for those fund balance reserves. All in, ending at 12/31/2018 as an estimate of $15 million. And I did want to footnote again with the general fund, this will not show you that general fund transfer. It will in the adopted budget, but we just haven't updated our slides because we will update in the adopted budget for the fire transfer. This is our general fund summary page. It does show you the revenues and expenditures. We gave you the higher level charts coming up, and you can kind of see that. It's a little hard to see on this page. But again, the reminder that the fire station's transfer will be shown in the 2018 adopted budget, and it will be shown in the 2017 column, and that's because that it's an amendment to 2017. For general fund revenues, the largest share of the revenues coming into the general fund are property taxes. As Library Director Dave Ruff mentioned, the majority of their revenue really is property tax. We have a smaller share with a lot of variety and distribution through other taxes and service fees. And I think that's an important thing that we look at, especially when we sit down with credit rating agencies, the actual diversification of revenue streams in our general fund to balance out our general fund. Followed by other home rule taxes such as telecom, real estate transfers, food and beverage tax, followed by state sales tax, home rule sales tax, that all make up the pie for general fund revenues. What's the breakdown for general fund expenditures? Well, again, because we are service industry, we are a municipality, you would expect that your salaries and benefits would encompass the majority of what you spend in your general fund. And it does, and it shows at this chart, with about 24% of your general fund expenditures for pension funds. And that's, again, in line with what you would expect for a municipality, followed by debt service and some transfers and supplies. The clicker always doesn't like me. The Public Works Department, I did want to footnote here, it is within the proposed budget for 2018. Something that we started in 2017 was to integrate the Community Development Department, again, bridging onto some of those changes that we're doing here at the city, to make that a division of the Public Works Department. So for 2018, for the budget, the Community Development budget is now integrated within the Public Works budget. Some items, such as economic development, are now part of the general government city manager area. So those items have been moved over, since the business advocate is now part of this area. There are 2 proposed part-time clerical positions budgeted for the Public Works Department, as discussed with City Council and the Mayor. And also, it is in the budget document itself. And that does account for the 9% increase year over year in the Public Works Department. Over on the Community Development Department side, there was a reduction of $176,000, or by 13%, and that is due to the CD director position elimination, as well as some expenditure reductions, and then also moving those economic development pieces now under the authority of the city manager. So overall change for the Public Works and Community Development, when you're looking at the budget pages itself, it's about a 0.6% or $22,000 year-over-year increase between those two departments combined. Again, chargebacks are slightly increased. We're trying to make sure that we're covering our equipment, IT, liability, and vehicles and maintenance on those items. And then also, there is a $50,000 budgeted item, actually contractual, for our community development department. That's because there's a corresponding revenue side for permitting. So when folks pay an item on their permit, there's also a revenue reimbursement. So you'll see that there. But overall, again, 0.6% year over year. We wanted to highlight that because of the fact that there were some changes in the budget, and it's an important one to mention. Moving on to the Utilities Fund, which does consist of the water, sewer, and stormwater divisions. The City Council just did approve the water, sewer, and stormwater rate ordinances at the October 10th City Council meeting. And again, this fund is an all-encompassing aggregate which pays for salary, benefits, supplies, contractual, the City of Chicago or JAWA rate increases or the water cost, billing, capital, and also debt service. So it's an aggregate of everything. Just as a reminder that the City Council in 2015 did contract with Baxter & Woodman, an engineering firm, to help us with a utility rate study. And right now we're working on an update to that study. So we're going to be coming back and discussing and reviewing and potentially discussing more changes with the City Council on future rate structures in terms of evaluating the overall picture and the overall debt structure for this fund. But the Utilities Fund does not aggregate by revenue or type of expenditure per se. When you open up the budget, you will see a water division, you'll see stormwater, you'll see sewer, and you'll see it broken down by salaries, benefits, contractual supplies, and capital, as well as debt. And we'll go into this in just a moment here. Here's a picture from the budget page as well, which shows the utility rates as approved just recently. Stormwater rates go into effect January 1st, and then water and sewer rates go into effect March 1st. And this is a page from the budget. For an average usage of 8,000 gallons per month, with those revenue changes, about $7.64 is the impact per month to a family of about 4 if you use about 8,000 gallons of water. And again, when you look at revenues as far as rates, it is all based on consumption. So when you look at rate by function, I think it's an important note to take here is that our JAWA costs is almost about 50% of what it takes to operate for our water fund. So followed by capital, and then chargebacks, and then water operations, meaning salaries and benefits. And then we split it out by operations, and then billing and administration, and also debt service. So I think it's a really important consideration to remember that we do receive our water from City of Chicago, and there's an expense to that at about $4.3 million each year, which is a majority almost of the water rate. That 15% in capital expenditures is $1.3 million of capital improvements for water. And those are listed here on this slide. They are also listed by line item in the proposed budget, and we have individual pages within our capital improvements plan. Our ad hoc capital improvements committee, which we're really grateful that we've spent so much time with them, have fully vetted these projects. And of course, many of these have started the process, but when it gets back to final approval of contracts, City Council's final review on these. Sewer rate by function, capital expenditures do comprise about 31%, followed by chargebacks, and the operations, administration, and billing, and debt service. With capital expenditures, the largest share of the sewer rate. And capital is about $745,000 for sewer capital improvement projects listed here. many requirements from the MWRD, for example, and also ongoing projects for improvements. The breakdown of the stormwater rate, again, capital expenditures comprise a majority on this one at 54%, followed by chargebacks and then operations and contractual and supplies. And $750,000 in stormwater capital improvement projects. Again, ongoing capital projects that are very critical for the city's infrastructure. So we'd like to leave that there. We're looking at a couple things here as far as city council discussion, as far as other changes or considerations for the 2018 proposed budget. And then we also were looking for direction in terms of, given the fact that most of the work has been done for the budget and to freeing us up to allow for additional time to devote to the utility rate study and bond scenarios, we were looking to see if that would be acceptable to the city council to remove the November 21st discussion from the COW meeting for the budget. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Melissa. As usual, you guys have done an amazing job. I know I've spent many, many hours on this, and I've met with staff on a number of occasions. And I do believe, Mr. Comstock, that you've met with all aldermen at least 1, 2, or 3 times there. So I guess since we've all had the opportunity to speak with it and speak to this budget, I guess we'll ask for a straw vote that we remove this from the November 21st COW meeting. Any question on that before we take the straw vote? All in favor? Aye.
I have a question.
Okay, sorry.
Can we have a discussion
Okay.
or answer questions on this before the straw vote in case there something doesn't get answered? I mean, it's up to you if you want to do a straw vote first, but I thought maybe conversations on this and then do a straw vote after that.
We could take that recommendation. I just, as staff has said, and as we brought forth, everyone has gone through it 2 or 3 times. If you have a specific question you want to bring forward, Mr. Diastis?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Melissa, can you discuss fund balance policies, why we have them, and what is the benefit of having them?
I sure can. Very good question, Alderman Diastis. Obviously, a fund balance policy is a target that you want to try to zero in on to help you not only budget, but to allocate your resources for upcoming years. It's a planning tool, but it's also a way that you're managing your cash and that making sure that you have reserves going forward. So it depends on the fund. In the last couple of years, the City Council has really made a lot of progress with the city by instituting a general fund policy for the general fund balance policy, the refuse fund, and the 911 fund. And so each fund has its own characteristics, and it's really the comfort level, as we've discussed with our city auditors, for instance, with the general fund, making sure you have sort of a range. So we have 15% to 30% for our general fund, and that's sort of the comfort level we have right now in our general fund. Not to say that we don't review those as we have on an annual basis. So given the fact that we're looking at those annually, that's something we do. So that's one of the reasons why, or many reasons why, we have fund balance policies.
And is it the intention of staff to add additional fund balance policies for other funds?
I can actually answer that one. Yes, we are potentially coming back to the city council with them. Obviously, for members in the audience and obviously the city council, when we feel that there's enough money into that we can actually accumulate and start the fund balance policy, we do that. And one thing that is very important about fund balance policy is that even when we go out to bond council, they do look at our fund balance policy, they make sure how we're adhering to it, and they also want to make sure that once you set it up that the council is pretty stable with it, so you're not, hey, I'm just making this and I'm not really living to it. So we do look at those kind of things. We do in bond council, and when we've gone out to bond and refinancing, they have a lot of questions about fund balance policy and when they would actually be in there. And our auditors always bring us other ideas to that.
Okay. May I continue, Mr. Mayor?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you. I have spent, like Mr. Mayor said, I've spent 14 hours studying this budget. I've had two 2-hour meetings with staff and one hour conference call. That's 19 hours, just that, not including any conversations I've had here, meetings, telephone calls, anything else. Staff has pretty much answered most of my questions. And whenever I've gotten a question that I didn't know the answer to, I would refer back to the budget. So when someone said to me, there's so much money being spent on water, I'd go back and I'd look at it and I'd say, well, there's a page in the budget, and I think, Melissa, you showed it to us, of the capital improvements that we're spending, how much?
$1.3 million.
$1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
And water and sewer and stormwater, those are infrastructures of the city. And yes, I think we could probably charge less and not fix the sewers. And when they break, you can't flush your toilet again. Or when you want water, you can't get it. I feel that staff has presented good numbers, solid numbers. I've had questions on it, and they've answered all my questions over 3 different meetings. I was particularly liked the graph you showed us, Melissa, on the water, and that 50% of the money that we pay is to buy water from the city of Chicago. Yeah, that one, 49%. I mean, that speaks volumes to me of what we're doing. And 15% is capital expenditures. Can you explain, I know the answer, but can you explain what chargebacks mean? That's 13% of our budget. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So Alderman Diastis and for City Council members in the public audience and on TV, the chargebacks are our cost allocation out to other funds in terms of liability insurance that we must pay, vehicles, our vehicle equipment fund as well, maintenance on those vehicles, and then also for IT equipment, and then also general equipment. So it is a cost allocation out to other funds to make sure that we are covering those costs and making sure we have the equipment available, and the resources available, and the liability insurance covered. And that's the reason why you need a cost allocation amongst those funds.
Okay. That pretty much answers all my questions, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, I spent a lot of time on this, and I've had 3 separate meetings, and I think they've answered questions admirably. And if anybody at the council level or residents have questions, I'm willing to take any question that you may want to email me, and I'll find out the answer and get it back to you, because what I'll do is I'll go back to city staff and ask them, and I'll look in the budget first, because I pretty much know most of it pretty good right now. But if I don't know, I'm happy to look it up and get you an answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Diastis. Any other thoughts? Mr. Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I just had a couple questions. You know, when I had my meeting with Melissa and Barry, as usual, they helped me a lot. But there was some things that I had some fundamental disagreements about what was in the book versus what I thought the numbers should be. And I haven't seen any numbers change, so I assumed that my ideas were just pushed to the side.
Well, I'll tell you what, can you hold that to number 2? Yeah, hold other changes or considerations. Right now, we're just going to ask if we can move the cow or remove the cow from November 21st.
Thank you.
So can we have a show of hands to remove the November 21st meeting for the budget from the cow meeting? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Which now, Mr. Cannon, brings us to other changes or considerations. Are there other changes or considerations that the City Council wishes to discuss?
Well, I guess the question I would ask, Mr. Mayor, is some of the things I pointed out are, I can wait till they're actually brought in front of us, being proposed. Like one of the, just for an example, we have a large budget for streetlights for next year, but yet we've solved a lot of that last week with our approving the streetlight program for this year.
Correct.
Is going to solve some of the budget issues we had for next year because we're going to do it all this year. So my question is that number going to change or does it stay the same? How do we change it? Because we don't need that much money next year if we're doing it all this year.
Is that Melissa or?
Like I'm on page 151 in the...
Okay.
Well, obviously, to your point, we've just approved those resolutions by City Council. We would adjust those items and not expend those items. When we get to the final budget, we would look at that as well to make sure that those adjustments are necessary. But at this point, all I can tell you is that they're in the proposed budget now. We have not made any changes. If it's something that we need to take back, we can make those changes upon further review to make those reductions as necessary.
Should I point out other things, or I'm not really sure how you want me to go with
But I'm going to
this.
leave that up to City
I don't wanna
Manager
be-
Crumstock.
What I would tell you to do, like what we've done in the past, if you want to point stuff out, we can look at them, but typically if you want something out of the budget, it has to be done by the straw vote, so we do it, or again, what you see.
So we do that now or later?
Yes.
So I should bring them up now?
You should bring them up
Do you
now.
have a series of questions now?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So am I all right?
Yep,
Okay.
fine.
just-
Okay, so going to page 172. I know you guys gave me the answer to this, but road program improvements for $50,000. I'm not really sure what that means. Under capital outlay?
So just for people at home, that's under the Public Works Stormwater Operations. So when we actually do road projects, any of the ones, there's actually some stormwater items that need to be done at the same time. So this is the road program improvements. When we're doing a local road, these are the stormwater operations with,
So repairing the road after the work's done.
it's repairing the stormwater items that are on that new road or that refurbished road or that remodeled road or rebuilt road. But those are attributed to, we were touching that road, we're going to be fixing the stormwater operation item.
Okay, and that same section, the Quinton Ridge Retention Project, which is literally right across the street from my house. For the last 3 or 4 years, correct me if I'm wrong, we've budgeted $75,000 and never used it. And now all of a sudden this year, we've raised it 66% up to $125,000. I don't understand why. First of all, I don't know if the work's going to be done enough. I don't think anybody here can answer that question tonight, but I don't understand why we would budget 66% more for a project we've been gearing for $75,000 for all these years. Just seems to be a huge increase for no reason, other than maybe hiding some money, kind of.
No hiding money.
Well, I mean, well, you know what, let me retract that. That was really a poor statement for me to make. I didn't mean it hiding money. I just mean, do we really need to put $125,000 down for that thing? Because it seems like we raised it $50,000 for no apparent reason that I'm aware of.
I see Fred walking up, so.
This is a proposed budget, and it is a working document.
Yep.
And we do put things in the budget, just like the library spoke about. The fact is they put things in the budget, and if they're able to squeeze it out, that's why our fund balance for the city has been so good over the last several years, that we've budgeted, but we've wound up with excess, which we've been able to do things with. But I'll let Fred go with that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For the Quinton Ridge proposed stormwater improvements, this has been a project that's been several years identified, and we have yet to be successful with any of the adjoining homeowners in obtaining easements to be able to do the proposed work. We did have our city engineer do a cost update on that earlier this year based on not only new information, but just based on the fact that it's been several years, and that's why the budget estimate was increased to cover the costs that could be increased due to so long a time being taken.
So you think we'll use the whole 125 for that?
If we're ever able to get the easements to be able to direct the water out of there, yes, that's what the engineers are telling us.
I guess the sister question I would ask to that is, when do we get to the point I think that you and your staff and our engineering people have bent over backwards to try to help these people, because it's basically one homeowner. And we seem to be running into, from my perspective, we seem to keep on running into a brick wall. Why do we keep on pursuing this? These people don't seem to want to cooperate with us in general, at least from my perspective. It's been, I think, 4 years now since we met in that backyard with a couple people from engineering, a couple people from your department, an outside engineering guy, and yet here we are 4 years later still budgeting for it, and there's been no movement on it.
4 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever it was that we had the rainfall event, you are correct, there was one property owner that suffered significant damage due to the stormwater running overtopping the detention basin, but that basin does protect several homes, not just the one, so we have no way of knowing what the future brings in terms of rainfall events or where the water would be directed to. So while it's one property owner that was affected then and one property owner that hasn't been totally cooperative in this regard, we haven't had any success with any of the others looking at alternate routes for this as well. So it may ultimately have to follow suit with where we've been discussing the Brookwood. It's very similar, or potentially very similar if we cannot otherwise obtain a easement to be able to direct the water.
Well, I guess I would either say we get rid of it now, or if we leave it in this year, that this is the last year in there. I mean, again, you guys have done more than bent over backwards to try to help this homeowner. So I mean, I'm not upset with the staff. I think you guys have done a great job. I mean, we're putting aside another big hunk of money, and Lord knows we have plenty of places we can use money in the budget. So I guess I'd like to see it transferred somewhere else, is my opinion.
Yeah, it's certainly per direction of the council.
Mr. Crumstock, comment?
No, again, just following up, if the council has the straw vote to remove it or keep it, well, right now it's in there, but if you want to remove it or you want to put $125,000 into some general, but that's what we would just need the straw vote on that.
I guess what I would am asking for is, my attitude at this point, I mean, it's literally almost a neighbor of mine. We've tried to do our work as a city. My attitude is we should take it out. If this homeowner decides they want to come forward and finally get the work done after all these years, maybe in 2019 we can put it back in. That's an opinion.
Or, Mr. Crumstock, we leave it in the budget and we can come back in 6 months and amend the budget?
You can leave it in the budget, and then if it's not utilized, it either goes into the reserves for next year, or if the city council decides to say we're not using that money, we want to do a different project in the stormwater operations, that money's already allocated, so you're not doing a budget amendment.
Okay.
Or we could use it at Brookwood.
Well, Brookwood has its own line.
Well,
Okay. So in other words, we can
use it somewhere.
We can use it somewhere this year.
That's my only point, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Gannon?
And also, I want to apologize for my poor wording earlier. I didn't mean what I said. I did say it. I apologize. On the next page, 177, I had this discussion before, and I was told it was not the right time, so I hope this is the right time. On the Big Belly software, I don't know why we would want to do that. We only have 4 waste baskets that we use that for, and then the line that goes with it. I think we spent $1,600 on that, if I remember correctly. It's not right in that line item, but I think Mr.
Telecommunications.
Yes, so I think there's like $2,000 between the two items, I believe.
So just for folks looking at, it's page 176, and Alderman Cannon's mentioning telecommunications, which is the solar compactor data line at $1,200. And the other one that I think that you're talking about is on operating supplies, which is $400?
Yes, Big Belly software, 177. So I'd like those to be removed.
Like I say, Mayor,
Any comment?
the intent of the Big Bellies were to be able to get information as to when they needed to be serviced, but certainly if we want to go back to the old-fashioned way of just servicing them on a schedule and taking care of it that way, I have no objection.
So what is your proposal?
Well, that's my proposal. That's the proposal I had before.
To remove $1,600.
We're talking about 4 garbage cans. We're spending $1,600 that we still empty whether we get the notification from them or not. And I don't think our plan correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Manager, I don't think our goal is to buy more of them at this point.
At this point, no, we don't have any plans to buy
So
more.
I would just like them removed.
Okay, do we, straw vote?
Straw vote, and again, you can do it together because they're both tied together,
Okay.
those two line items.
So we have a straw vote on those 2 line items that you brought forth?
There's a.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gallo.
Yeah, I don't know if I can ask this, but what is the recognized savings from implementing these push notification wireless devices in the waste management? Do you have a forecast for that?
No, I really don't, because we only did the 4. Plans going back a few years anticipated putting several more in, and certainly if you've got a larger stock of them, the savings in not having to service them if they don't need service is certainly there, but we've not done any study on it.
Any conversations with the manufacturer about that, or this is all preliminary, just putting the line item in and then go from there?
Yeah, we
That-
haven't been back to the Big Belly for some time.
Yeah, that's just, we've just been servicing the 4 because we've had them for a few years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Batteries and other stuff.
Okay, so Mr. Cannon, again, just repeat what you want removed from the budget here, Ken.
So I'd like the telecommunications line for the 4 garbage cans,
Okay.
which I believe are referred to as Big Bellies by staff,
That is
Big
correct,
Bellies, okay.
and then the Big Belly software.
which is $400 under
$400.
operating
So
supplies.
the-
$1,600 there.
Okay.
Plus the $125,000 for the Quinton Ridge Detention Project. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take those as one. We have a straw vote.
Oh, well, you can take the 2 Big Bellies as one.
Okay.
Quinton, but the Quinton Ridge is its
Separate, well, that's what I'm saying, 2 big bellies. Straw vote to remove the 2 big belly items. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous, okay.
No.
I didn't vote.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr.
That's
Gallo.
okay.
5-4. Thank you. And then you just wanted...
The Quinton Ridge, $125,000, remove it from the budget.
And just completely removed it? You don't want to place anything?
And I'm sure we can find a place for it. I mean, there's lots of places I can offer.
Okay.
I don't think Quinton Ridge Retention Project.
So the Quinton Ridge Retention Project to remove $125,000 from the budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Anything else, Mr.
Yeah,
Gannon?
on page 189 is that the other part of the streetlight thing I was talking about. So when we originally did the streetlight program, Mr. Diastis and I were on that committee. Our goal was we're going to do $30,000 a year for 3 years.
Yes.
But the proposal we voted on last week was to spend $19,000 this year and do all 3 years at one time.
Okay.
So I don't understand why we have $30,000 more in there, because to my understanding, we wouldn't need that $30,000 because the money will be spent this year and the project will be assigned and paid for this year.
Okay. Is that Mr. Vogt?
It's in the proposed budget because it's only been more recent than when we prepared the budget in the summer to learn about the grants that have been offered by ComEd and meeting with and interviewing the different companies and trying to determine how we can get that done. Although the contracts were approved last week by City Council, our hope and anticipation with contractors' intent to complete those by the end of the year. If we don't, we certainly would need some funds to fall back, or however we would handle the payments if it does drag out into later into 2018. But Alderman Cannon's correct, as best I understand, that we wouldn't have to, in essence, double fund. If we can get the work done and get it paid for this year, then that makes it moot. But I hesitate to assure anybody that it actually will get done by the end of 2018, or by end of 2017. It could go into 2018.
But it's still going to be, we still have the money funded for it right now. I mean, it's paid for. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Manager, we're funded now for it, right? For all 3 years, basically, in one.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the whole streetlights, ComEd, and our city streetlights done in 2018. We can't guarantee that it's going to be done, but we're trying.
But it's budgeted. I mean, from a money standpoint, though, it's paid for, right?
Yep, in 1 year, but that's why we were putting, and again, when we were dealing with this, creating this budget in July, that's why we put money in.
Could we just put like $5 or $10 grand in the cover if that's what you need?
I would say the same caution that I would rather that we leave the money in there, and again, if it's not utilized, it just goes back into
Question.
the fund balance at the end of the time, just in case. So,
Does that answer your question?
It answered my question. It's not going to get, I don't want to fight with staff over it. They really feel it's a necessary thing. That's good. I just would like, we have so many other needs. If there's any way we can get money out to use some other way, it seems like we have a list of things that we need to get done. If we don't need that money there, I'd rather see them assigned soon, so it's not something we have to discuss again in the future, that we've assigned money to that, and now it's done. Whereas this seems like it is going to be done.
Or we possibly may know more a month from now before we vote on the budget as to the schedule, working with the 2 contractors that were just hired.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Alderman Diastis.
Couldn't we look at this as a prepaid expense this year and carry it forward? I mean, that's what we do in business. If I've got extra money this year, I prepay it this year, put it on my books, and then pay it next year, and it doesn't hit the books next year, and then I don't have to tax anybody for it this year.
yeah, part of it is also how the auditors are going to look at it. If the project's not done, you can't do that with our auditors, but that's part of why you need to budget for another year too.
But if the money is in this year's budget,
But the project's not done until 2019.
I understand.
That's where they
Until
want
19 or 18?
18.
So if the money is here now, to Mr. Cannon's point, and the project gets done next year, we don't have to put another $30,000 into it because we have the money this year. It'll end up in reserves this year because it wasn't spent, so we just take it out of the reserves next year and spend it.
That's another way of doing it, but at the same point in time, they prefer that you show it this way, so you're not pulling
Okay,
pulling out of fund balance.
I second your motion to take it out this year entirely, next year entirely.
Okay. Does that,
That should be great, yeah.
okay, so with straw vote, you're taking out approximately, it's exactly what, $30,000?
30,000 is budget, because I already remind you also that we're only spending 19 this year, so we actually have like an $11,000
Okay.
bonus for this year.
Carryover, yeah.
Carry over. Hold on. Let's give staff a moment.
So I want to make sure they're all right with that. It's,
Yes. And, do you have a question?
I was just curious, Manager Krumstock, how would that affect, by striking this line item, how is that going to affect our achieving a fund balance by using what's currently collected in 2016-17 timeframe? Does that hinder our progress to achieving a fund balance by using what is a surplus of money left over this year for next year's project?
The quick answer is it would not hinder, it just doesn't look, and again, we're going to be going out for potential bonds or anything else. They just look at it differently if you're just starting to pull money from fund balance. They prefer, and again, anybody looking at the budget, is that it's a line item that you're pulling. So to answer that question is, and the preference by staff is to leave it as a budgeted item, not pulling it from the fund balance at a later date.
Okay.
And Fred, just to follow up on your comment, you can't be 100% sure that it'll be done this year, correct?
That is the goal, but weather conditions, equipment, delivery, I can't control the contractors in that regard, so I just put caution to the wind.
Okay. So, Mr. Cannon, you still want to go ahead with pulling the $30,000?
Yes, I would.
So, a show of hands a straw vote of those who would like to pull the $30,000 this year. 3 yes. Opposed?
I go opposite.
As you know, it fails for lack of majority. Any other questions, Mr. Cannon?
Yes, on page 135, or 185. When I had my one-on-ones, I had a couple discussion items. I personally would like to see us get out of the street sign business, so I'd like to get rid of the $30,000. I also have a philosophical problem with buying another trackless snowplow that we use 5 or 6 times a year, and we pay $120,000 for. I had an alternative. I think we could buy a Bobcat for about half that and use it in multiple functions in the city and pay one. From the little bit of research that I can do, even though I don't work for the city, I did a little bit of research. We can get a high-end one for about $60,000. and we can use it for more than just snow plowing. And it would perform the same function as a backup. Because we have one right now that's operating, it's fairly new. They're very, very expensive vehicles. They break down frequently. If you talk to our maintenance department, they hate the things. You know, why we want to buy a second one for that kind of money is amazing to me. The other item on there, I've asked for this a couple of times, but I don't seem to get any response on the refuse truck. We've made a dramatic change in the way we use our trucks, but yet here we're going right again to order another truck already for $275. I don't understand why we can't push that back a little bit and maybe wait another year.
Well, you have two different items there. First, the snow. Fred, you want to take the snowplow?
I guess just as an overall request, I would appreciate consideration to remand some of these questions to our vehicle replacement committee, which certainly could convene in the next couple of weeks if we can schedule that and have further discussion and have some study on it. This is something that I'm not recently been doing any price investigation or prepared tonight to do justification on the equipment.
And for the second item, well,
I'm familiar with this. I'm familiar with this
well,
meeting.
Considering you and I used to serve on the vehicle replacement committee.
I think we can. Fred's solution is fine with me.
Okay, how about for both items?
Well, I don't know.
I'd even ask if it's not directly equipment from a vehicle standpoint, but we could certainly do some, get some research together on justification on the sign equipment, or bring that back to council directly, whichever you prefer.
Well,
I think it's back to council.
Bring it back to council.
So all three of the items is fine.
Okay, all three of the items, and then you will meet with your new partner on vehicle replacement.
Lucky him. Yeah, he can't wait to dive in.
Yes, so, okay.
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, Mr. Cannon, anything else?
I think you've heard enough from me already.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments? This brings us to the point where we have four individuals who have signed in tonight. Two are for the budget, one is for the Brookwood, and one gentleman signed in on the fire station, but the fire station is not on the agenda tonight. If you wish to come speak next week, when it will be on the agenda, you're more than welcome, Dale. You've been here many times, so.
We don't for one of the other ones.
Thank you. The council is now open to members of the audience for 20 minutes to address the city council on matters that are on the agenda. We ask that persons wishing to address the city council keep their comments to 5 minutes in length. Comments must be addressed to the council as a whole through the mayor, and profanity may not be used in any form. Ms. Patty Callahan, you are first up on the agenda today.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've come to talk to about the budget again. I have a couple questions. If you just bear with me, I need to bring up my phone. I've got questions about how much we spend on water. Currently in Rolling Meadows, our customers pay $10.79 per gallon per 1,000 gallons. But in Arlington Heights, they spend $5.80 per 1,000 gallons. We get our water from the same place. They get it from Chicago just like we do. Is that correct or not?
No, they do not.
Yes.
I have a question.
But this is about the budget, which is we're all paying, we all get our stuff from the same place.
Ms. Callahan,
Yes.
please direct your questions to the chair, please. Thank
Okay.
you.
So my question is, are we getting our water from the same place? And in the budget, we're spending this money, and you're asking the people of Rolling Meadows to, A, an increase in water and an increase in the budget. An increase with the budget, and you're asking for more money from us.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of wondering, where is all this coming from? Has the city of Rolling Meadows, I know that we can ask for the city of Rolling Meadows to go ahead and ask for, to go ahead and to, do something with the pensions when it comes to our fire and police personnel. That's locked down. Have we looked into maybe rolling pension programs with our city employees and rolling them into 401ks? Is there anything else that we've looked at to go ahead and to maybe, reorganizing our city and saying, is there something that we can do?
Okay.
And that's what I'm asking the city,
Okay.
is to looking outside of the box. Because what I see here and what I've been seeing is things are not, we're not improving. We're not making improvements. We have fresh ideas coming up, and what I'm starting to see is a good old boys attitude coming up lately. And a quorum is happening here, and new ideas are coming up, and they're getting squashed. And things do need to change. We've got opportunities here. We're in a great location. We're right off of Route 53. We've got some new homes that have been built. Schaumburg, 2,500 homes right there. Why move a fire station when we can possibly get into a contractual agreement with Schaumburg? I'm just saying, I'm bringing up ideas,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you.
Think outside the box. Maybe we can get an agreement with Schaumburg because of where that fire station is located. That's all I'm saying to the council. Think outside the box. Don't just look in one certain area.
Okay.
Think outside the box. We're in a great location. We've got long-standing businesses here, long-standing residents. We're in a great location. Make it a great city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much. She knows I'm not feeling well tonight.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
could I just ask that Barry get the opportunity, to clarify where the difference between Arlington's water and
That is very simply, they get it from the city of Evanston. They are part of a different JAWA group that the city of Rolling Meadows is not. Yes, the city of Rolling Meadows, Elk Grove, Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg, we are part of our JAWA group is the city of Chicago, Lake Michigan Water. So again, Arlington Heights, Palatine, Buffalo Grove, they are part of a different group, and they get it from the city of Evanston.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Majakis. The next person up is Mr. Michael Lynch to speak on the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council, for giving me a couple of minutes. I have not spent 14 hours on the budget. I only spent 2. And I've learned over the years not to take anything for granted. So I would just like to commend you in keeping with the allusion that Mr. Crumstock made prior to Melanie's presentation, that I know the budget is tight, but I would commend you to retain the $60,000 for the comprehensive plan review. There's a lot going on. It's 10 years old, and if we don't have the right information when the Planning and Zoning Commission takes up this project, garbage in, garbage out. Secondly, I understand that the city, and it's not unlike other cities, communities around the country, is 9 years behind in its adoption of the International Code Council's building codes. I would ask that you consider putting into a lockbox for the next 3 years maybe 5% of your permit fees, so that at the end of the next code cycle, which will be in 3 years, you'll have the money rather than having to fight for the money to buy the most recent codes. So even in our recession, the private sector has been extremely innovative in construction and appliances, et cetera. There's been many changes to the code in the last 9 years alone. And as we talk about being inviting to new businesses who want to bring those innovative products into their building, their construction, they ought not to have a debate with our building department or our community development department over why they want to use a particular technology. If we have the code, if we've purchased the code and if the code is ready, then again, that's going to help facilitate the income of new businesses into the city. Third, my understanding is in my review of the budget that the city collects a little under $700,000 a year in motor fuels tax. I did not see a footnote that asked the council to recognize that that will, over time, can decline. And it's going to decline in part because the federal government and our state government is subsidizing the purchase of electric vehicles. And I'm not disparaging electric vehicles, but the fact is they do as much, if not more, damage to our roads because of their weight, and they buy no gasoline. So they're not putting any money into the road and maintenance funds. So I would commend you to consider that as you think about future budgets. And finally, I want to thank you for the monies that you're planning to put into water infrastructure. Being a West Sider, it's going to be nice to be able to water my lawn and my wife take a shower at the same time. Because I understand from the great city staffer that came out to examine our water pressure that it's not a home issue, it's just the volume of water that's coming into the west side. So to the degree to which these improvements are going to increase water pressure to the west side, I'm all for it. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Lynch. I guess you wanted to talk about the budget instead, right, Dale?
Yeah. He's
No, Mr. Hollis just signed up for a different topic. You originally?
Budget sounds good.
Okay.
I'm here to talk about the budget. In a roundabout way, the lady that brought up that presentation, as far as the business sector bringing money and jobs into the area is great. What we need is our aldermen to get on the same page. We have a few aldermen, and they know who they are. That the residents talked. I was to a few meetings last year with what things wanted to be done around town, what residents want to see downtown. Fire stations staying there. I mean, some of these aldermen tell me that, it's done, and that's the way it's going to be. You're beating a dead horse. But now you got businesses coming in, and businesses spend money. And, the lady had said that businesses want to see restaurants downtown. I seen it on the show. They want to see entertainment. They want to see, you're not going to get money in to help the budget if you're going to just keep putting homes up, because you're only going to get real estate taxes. You're not going to get the income. What I want to see is these aldermen that don't want to do anything downtown, show me to where I can put thousands of homes on there, but you show me where we're going to get the money outside of real estate taxes to support our budget. I mean, we need businesses here. Same thing with the Sam's Club. What's being done with that property? That's an income revenue source. I mean, they talk about taking this out of the budget or taking that out of the budget. That's all fine and dandy. If they spent, I had one alderman tell me that he spent 19 hours looking at the budget. Maybe if he take 19 hours and go see what kind of business he can get into the city, then maybe we wouldn't have to worry about what we're going to take out of the budget. So that's my only point, that we have to, it's what the residents told you last year. Some of you listened, some of you didn't. And now you got businesses. I'm really impressed with that report that was done. It shows the pluses for the city and it shows the minuses for the city. And you know what? If you don't want to start listening to the residents, start listening to the businesses. Because their taxes, they said that was one of their complaints, were the taxes also. So, I mean, it's taxes for everything. So, I mean, if you guys want to make an easy budget and not have to keep taking stuff out of the budget, let's get some income into the city and we'll all be better off. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming forward. Mr. Crumstock, I guess we're moving on to the...
I actually ask respectfully if the city council could indulge to move number 6, which is the Brookwood Stormwater Detention Update, because I know as much as I think they love listening to this conversation, I'd like to get them home. Maybe they can watch the Cubs game. But if the city council would just take a straw vote to move number 6 up, and then we can have discussion with Brookwood.
Okay, straw vote to move number 6 up. Okay. All right. As long as we're at this point, we're going to take a brief recess for a couple minutes. So, thank you.
Window?
It's on. Barry, it's on.
And we are back. Mr. Cromstock, is it Mr. Vogt for?
It's actually going to be, it's actually going to be Mr. Vogt with Brookwood.
They've muted us.
Ah, yes. Okay, Mr. Comstock, we are live again. It's Mr. Vogt. You are front and center.
Thank you, Mayor. Most recently, in the spring of this year, we're here at a committee of whole agenda to discuss the Brookwood stormwater detention proposed improvements and the difficulty that staff and city attorney have had with getting an easement, getting any dialogue with the Brookwood Homeowners Association. At that time, we discussed the desired and necessary size of the pond. The city council gave staff direction to maximize the land acquisition now, in case we need and can use all of it later. That's up for negotiation and work with the city engineer at a later date. But that direction was taken. The city attorney secured a updated appraisal reflecting, roughly to describe it, the southernmost 65 feet of the Brookwood property, which is inclusive of the existing detention area and extends it into the portions of the parking lot and some of the areas where there aren't designated parking stalls. There is a map, I believe it's on page 10 in the packet of the appraisal for those wanting to look at that. The appraisal came in at $66,300. 4 years ago, the smaller area was appraised at $22,300, just for comparison. So with this information, staff is asking that council consider to authorize the city attorney to utilize this appraisal in communications with Brookwood and to express the desire of the city to purchase the stormwater easement and proceed with the improvements. Should that not be possible to do based on lack of cooperation, then the city council would need to consider the direction to condemn the property to pursue this project to allow us to be able to build it. So that's where we are as of tonight.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Vogt. I was wondering either if you or Mr. McCall can let us know, have we had any more discussions with Brookwood? Have they acknowledged this, or they know what we're doing?
No, they have not had any additional communication since the last time that we were there, and they were yelling at us. So.
Okay, thank you.
Or yelling at Grant.
Any other comments?
Yeah, based on this, based on the bump that's in this thing, will it separate the parking into two separate areas? I can't tell really from the drawing.
No, it won't separate it into two separate areas, but we'll take out some of the area that's in front of the front door of the southernmost building, where there is a turnaround and a large paved area that isn't currently designated for parking.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? Mr. McCall, wish to add anything? Or?
No, everything's been said.
We're just looking for the direction.
So we're looking for a straw vote to move ahead based on staff's recommendation. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? 6-6. All right, we're done.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Comstock, where are you leading us on this magical tour?
Well, just wanted to make sure there were no signatures.
You
just voted, so go ahead.
No. Mr. Hollish, I apologize. Mr. Hollish?
You just voted, it's not important.
Would you like to talk about the budget too?
No, Mr. Hollish, I owe you a deep apology. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're running short of time, so go ahead. Let's go to Spoons.
Okay, thank you.
You've been waiting all night for that.
Wow. Famous last words that people don't always hear.
Go ahead, Barry.
I'll kick it off, and then we'll turn it over to Alderman Diastis. So obviously, when this was brought up, obviously the Village of Vernon Hills has been in the newspapers and the media throughout when they started this skunk abatement reimbursement program. It's actually administered by the Finance Department, which is quite interesting, and hearing some of the stories, they've actually had people bring in skunks. There's been some interesting adventures that we've heard through some stories, but part of it is also the seriousness of it is that skunks by state law are, you need to obtain a permit from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources or a licensed service to actually deal with them. And I know that periodically the city has had to deal with skunks around City Hall because it gets to be a nuisance when they like the back of the property, not the front of the property. But this is all in regards to what does a municipality want to do with really some people would call nuisance, some people would call a rodent, some people would call wildlife, but it's a whole discussion because every municipality deals with it a little differently. So it took me a little time, but that's what you have in front of you, the Vernon Hills skunk abatement, and it only deals with it. Some municipalities have actually contracted with outside services for wildlife control overall. They have a prorated rate for that municipality, but then your sole source, it's not out in the market where all different places are out there. And some, like what we've done, and actually most municipalities, they just give out wildlife control numbers, and it's really the responsibility. Yes, as people have stated, skunks, because the winters have been mild, have grown in population. A lot of their overall predators are down. Coyotes are one of those, but the same point in time is we're bringing this discussion. We do have a small line item in the budget that deals with animal control. Most of that has been dogs, cats, feral cats, and obviously raccoons and some other items that we've had to deal with. But we bring this up to this point in time because October is the prime time for skunks. But again, overall, the most aggressive one is this Vernon Hills document, and that's what it's out here for the discussion. So with that, I turn it over to Alderman Diastis.
Thank you. I've had numerous residents contact me about skunks. And they're in my backyard. They sprayed my dog once or twice. I saw this from Vernon Hills, and I thought this is a way for the city to help residents who want to do something or who have a concern. Basically, my understanding of this, and I just lost it here, is the resident would contact a licensed agency. They come out, put a trap down, remove it, they pay for it, and then the city would reimburse that person. I think it's $75 is what Vernon Hills does. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that we have to do 75 or 25 or 50 or 100, but it helps our residents, and if we put some, and it's one of the things they're clamoring about, so I just want to bring it up as a discussion item to see what council wants to do.
Mr. Gallo.
Do you know if they charge per capture or just per service call?
Okay.
Per capture.
I think it's per capture.
Excuse me, my understanding is per capture. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Right.
My understanding is per capture because my neighbor had it done and they brought it out, and when it caught, that's when they charge.
I would just hate to see hundreds of people call to have this service come out, and then the city have to reimburse them for the service fee and no capture of skunks for
Is there Mr.
Yeah. There's actually two different business models. There are some business models that once they bring the trap, that's part of the fee. But then when they capture the critter, it depends on what the cost is going to be. So a skunk is one cost, a squirrel is definitely a cheaper price, but it all depends on what they capture at that point in time. And some of them do exactly what was mentioned before. It's not until they have the capture that the fee comes in here. And like Vernon Hills has on it, that's why they have to show that you have a contract with that contractor, that licensed individual, and then you have to show the receipt with the documentation. That's where some of the interesting times where people didn't understand what the program is, and here's my skunk. Well, that's not what they want. Part of it, the definitive, and it was $75 per skunk, but it depends on which group you're actually using. If it's the setup is one cost, and then whatever they capture, and then comes back into, that's why certain places, a sole sourced vendor, because then they set it up how they would like the resident to deal with it.
Alderman Jacobs.
And just because, unfortunately, over the last few years with dogs, I've become an expert on this subject. Not in a way that I'd like to, but Clarence, Suzu. But just so you know, too, that when my neighbor had this, the trap they send out for the skunk could trap anything. So it's trapped, and unfortunately, she trapped a coon instead of a skunk. So just so if something goes out, it's clarified that this is for skunks, not for whatever gets trapped, because it's the same exact trap.
Mr. Crumstock, I don't have it in front of me. You said there's a budget for animals. Do you know what it is approximately?
Not on the top of my head. I know Melissa's probably flipping through it. I think
Melissa's flipping through the book.
7,700 for next year, I think.
I think it is, because I know there's less than $10,000. And I know that we were used part of it in 2017 for animal control, so that full amount is not there. But again, starting a program, and the city council, if you're starting a program, just like with Vernon Hills, they put a cap in it. So it's, the first number that hits that cap, that's it. Everybody else who comes after that, and that's why they also use December 31st with this program. 8,000 is what's
8,000. And that starts January 1st. Yes, Mr. Bugmans.
I've had some experience with skunks this year.
Is that a contract you have in front of you?
This is a contract that has been fulfilled. The price was $175 to lay the trap, and then for the initial cleaning of the trap, and then thereafter it would be $50 per skunk. The skunks got the message and left the neighborhood. I think they moved to a different ward.
Thank you. I appreciate the effort.
No problem. But it would have only been $50 a skunk thereafter for additional skunks. So depending on what we set the price, this could be a profit motive.
How many did they catch?
They caught one. But I know that we had 9 because I saw all 9 of them.
I had
Thank you,
skunks
Mr.
several years ago,
Yes.
and we caught 6.
So
Yes, Mr. Cannon.
I guess the thing I might offer as a possibility, if we were going to do this, I think it's not a bad program. Maybe we could contract with one company, and they'd be willing to. Because we all know, like, I don't have a skunk living in my backyard, but one of them walks through my yard every day.
In bed with that company.
So I don't, I'd be willing to throw one in my backyard. Especially if we had a fixed cost. If we said to a guy, hey, if you bring 15 traps out or whatever number we decide, if people would be willing to put them in their place. I would think that might be a less expensive option going forward, because if this is $175, some people might say, wow, I don't know if I hate them, but I don't know if I hate them that much.
Yeah, once your dog gets sprayed, you do.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
Been there,
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah, been there, done that, yes.
Yeah.
I've been there. Yes.
I just do want to put out there that I just noticed really quickly here. Quickly, sorry. That's, it does state that skunks can be beneficial at times because they tend to eat a lot of bees. So I was just putting that out there as a reference to the paper in front of me.
I know Mr. Badger has a response to that one, yes.
Well, I wasn't going to come right out and say it, but obviously I wouldn't support this because they're predators of bees. Also, just wild animals in the city, trying to contain them. you actually do. If you take them out of the city, they just repopulate. If you move them around the city, they just move to different areas. And I wouldn't be in support of this just because it's a never-ending process of shuffling animals, and then their populations will boom right back. We've noticed the 2 times we've talked about this on council have been huge years for skunks. And so this year, if you've noticed, they're trying to put on their winter fat, and they've been in, I can't drive around the city in early morning or at dusk without seeing a couple skunks, because they're out there snarfing up those grubs that are right under the grass. So I wouldn't be in support of doing something like just because it never ends, and we'll set a program in place that will be used this year, and it won't be used the next 2 or 3 years until that cycle repeats itself. So I think it's just something the residents need to either deal with the odoriferous. We have a family that nested under our deck for most of the summer, and there's really no way to dislodge them, and they moved out finally. So it's something we just deal with. So I'm not going to be supporting the program, and I think if you wait them out this year, I bet they'll hit that boom and bust cycle probably next year. So I know they come around the beehives occasionally, but they don't topple them over like a bear would. We don't have bears here, but that's a bigger threat. Thank you.
They're in Ward 1 too.
Well, Mr. Alderman Diaz, since you brought this up, what's your thought?
I would like this the staff to propose something, whether it's one vendor, multiple vendors, whether it's a fixed amount. It should be per animal trapped. I'd like to see us do something to help all the residents who have said they're having a problem. I think this is something the residents want to do. So I want to say yes, move ahead and let staff come up with something, and we vote on it.
So, okay, Mr. Crumstock, so staff report in a couple. Well, I know, I'm just asking, that's, the straw poll is going to be, you can come up with a...
If the straw poll says we need to come back with a program, we will come back with a staff report, and then from the staff report, hopefully get some nods.
Okay. So now we're going, yes, Mr. Cannon.
Can I ask a question that goes along with this? A number of years ago, my in-laws used to live in Prospect Heights, right across from Rob Roy Golf Course on Wheeling Road. The reason I bring it up, they had problems with raccoons a couple of times. There was actually a person that worked in our Public Works Department, our Public Works Department, that actually had a side business.
Yes.
I'm not being facetious, I just...
I know the gentleman, and I've used him on a number of occasions.
I don't know if we could,
It's actually our police department. Al Jers is the person who you're thinking about.
Does he still do it?
I don't think so.
Don't think so.
Well,
I think he's really retired.
Yeah, but there's also some from Public Works who retired who still does it, so.
So maybe if one of those guys would be willing, maybe we could cut a deal with him, is my point. Thank you for listening.
Any other comments before we ask for a straw vote? Okay, the straw vote will be asking for giving direction to staff to come up with a program and bring it into a staff report. Okay, all in favor? And opposed? 2. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
You're welcome.
All right. Now, this is an anticipation. Is it taking 2 years, Mr. Cannon? You've been...
It's taking a lot more than 2 years. We don't get into the years.
But we're going to talk about council chambers, and Mr. Cannon.
So you in?
Take one.
This is Fred. Wow, did you get money?
No, it isn't.
Oh, different. Just different.
Well, Lori Cezak did a great job putting together a list of things that we might want to try to accomplish. I guess the first question I would ask all of you is just to sit at your seats, but just look back at the wall that we look at all the time from a city standpoint, that way. Mm-hmm. And I've had people who live in my ward that say we look like we're an older town because of the look we have. So the whole reason I even bring this up in front of you is that...
Mike.
I'm sorry. So the whole reason I'm bringing this up tonight is I've always felt for a long time we're trying to impress people to come and do their business in our town. We're trying to impress people to move into our town. We don't need to be just like all of our neighbors, but I think we need to put a more professional face on this chamber. So I know we don't have a lot of budget money to do a lot of things all right at one time. So one of the things that Lori and I discussed, that we came to an agreement on, we thought that we would make a proposal to you tonight to try to address some things in the first phase, okay? The first phase, what we're asking for is about a $50,000 budget for this next year. And that would concentrate on up there, getting rid of the wood wall and the state of Illinois picture, getting all that wood off the wall and redecorating that, and then doing a new dais. So along with this is a picture of what Wheeling's done. And the reason Lori did a great job getting that together for us, again, I'm sorry. So that's a modular system, so it has some flexibility to it. It's not what some people might call a case good or a cabinet. It's not a, it has flexibility. It's movable. You can put shelves on it, things of different nature, okay? So it's more adjustable, more flexible, as opposed to just one thing. So as all of you who have ever done remodeling your house, or in hotels in your case, realize that once you start doing one thing leads to another. So after we realized if we redo the dais, the next thing we're going to have to do is carpet. So the carpet wave that we've used here in our building, a number of, I think you said 3 different places or 2 that we've used this?
The squares,
Yeah.
right now, just
Just one, I'll do public work. Anyhow, this is what a lot of people are using now is carpet squares. So people, if aren't familiar with it, it gives you a lot more flexibility. If you damage or wreck something, or if you have a bad traffic pattern, you can pull a couple up and put new pieces down. Most people, when they buy a product like this, usually buy a couple extra boxes for future use. Sometimes they don't use them, but you always have them, as opposed to like with your regular carpet at home when you wear a path in it. You got to replace the whole piece of goods. So this is one of the things we'd like to do in the future, but we can't do that right now. So what we propose to you is to try to get a voice of straw vote saying that you would support us for $50,000 for the first year. We can't give you an outline of everything we're to do in each phase, but it's probably a 5-phase program. So for 5 years, we would probably come back and ask you for $50,000 or whatever, or ask you for a separate thing. All the blinds need to be redone. If you look around, we have, I think, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 different woods in here. So we'd like to, and then the other thing I want to impress upon you, we try to get some people involved. Barry has been great with his time trying to get us help. Chief Nowicki, because he's our security for all of us, has made some recommendations. So one of the first recommendations is we're going to get rid of the windows over there, because it's a safety issue. So he'd like to get rid of those. He thinks it would be easier to keep us all safe. So again, here's the first 8 items on here that we're suggested we do. And then the 1 and 2 down at the bottom are things that we'd like to look into to find out exactly what they cost. Lori, again, has done a great job investigating some of these things. We have some basic budget numbers, but we don't want to get hung up on that right now because we can't guarantee any kind of numbers at all with any kind of validity. So we have a lot of changes we can make in the room. The first thing we'd like to do is basically redecorate and then go from there. Because when you look at all the things right here, back wall construction, the chair rail, get rid of this, it's kind of ancient. Get rid of the windows over there. That window over there, it's not even within use anymore. Replace the garbage cans and get something that looks a little bit more professional in a room like this. Get some wall-mounted literature racks. The proposal we've had from a couple people is to get 2 new TV monitors and put them in each corner back there. Maybe move that one over to there, or maybe leave that one there and get 2 more of that size in each corner so everybody in the room can see what's going on. Even though these 2 have some flexibility to them, everybody felt that there might be some better visibility if we got 2 bigger ones back there. Paint the entire room. Now, the good news is Fred's volunteered his staff to get the work done. The good news is he's willing to do it. The bad news is he can't promise a date because obviously he only can do things when his staff is available. Obviously, snow events and all those kind of things would take precedent over, decorating a room. But what we're looking for, again, is your approval tonight to try to at least go through the first steps of it. And then as time goes on, we'll try to bring back phase 2, 3, 4, 5. Just to give you a little bit of history from the things that we've learned. I think Lori's probably learned a lot more than I have even. When people walk in the room, the designers, they know that this room in general, the last time it was touched is overall, they say that that's in the 80s sometime. So when you think about it, it's like 35 or 40 years old. And obviously, you saw the report tonight that we had to begin with from Melanie about image. There is something to be said for that. Obviously, we felt strong enough. We spent a lot of money on the outside of the building this year trying to make it look more professional. Our staff is, we redid the parking lots. We're trying to do little things. Now we'd like to do some little things in here. But I'm looking for your support. If you have questions, we'll try to answer them. I don't know if I'll have answers, but I'll try if anybody has any questions.
Well, I'll start off. Thank you. You've been going at this for years. And this goes back to being, as an alderman, I thought my first recollection is we were just going to try and refresh for like $10,000 or do something with the back of the walls back there. And my personal thought is it's just a lot of money, but I'll leave it open to the rest of the council. Questions, comments?
I'm absolutely in favor of revision and revamping and perception. I am definitely taken aback by the sticker price initially. Construction, remodeling, commercially, residentially is something I'm familiar with. I think if we're going to approach it aesthetically or cosmetically first, I would like to see it a little bit less than $50,000. Or if it were to be $50,000, we would do our darndest to come in at least 20% below that budgeted amount the first pass.
So you're saying you'd be willing to support $40,000?
Well, I would like to be more around $35,000.
Oh, that's more than 20 then.
Well, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Here, I'm not getting into percentages specifically, but that's a lot of money for curtains and windows and monitors.
It is, but and Mr. Gallo, I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with you, but if we rebuilt that dais and we had a cabinet maker come in here
voluntarily.
We have a guy who volunteered to do that for free?
Well, we have staff on that's going to contribute their time. I understand they'll be compensated through Public Works.
I don't think we have staff that has the ability to build a dais for us.
We have wonderful tradesmen on staff throughout the entire city.
I don't mean it. I didn't mean to disparage them. I don't know if we have finished carpenters.
We can explore other. Oh, we absolutely do.
If you have other people you want to get involved, that's great. But I can tell you, just from the research we've done,
gentlemen, so that we don't get back and forth with each other, can we just one at a time?
Yeah.
So, Mr. If you could ask specific questions and let Mr. Cannon ask them, so we don't.
I would like us to explore trying to take this first pass a little bit more frugally.
Okay. Other comments? Alderman Majankas.
Thank you. I just had a question. When you talk about the back wall reconstruction, are you looking to make it exactly like the Village of Wheeling's look?
No.
Okay, good. I don't like that.
Lori, the thing that I'm kind of scared about, because I've done a little remodeling in my life, and the problem is when you have an older building, ours isn't ancient, but I've expressed this to Fred also. When you take that wall down, you assume everything's going to be good.
Yeah.
But
Don't do that.
you're in real estate, you understand. When you take a wall down, you never know exactly, so we might think all we got to do is just take it down and repaint it. But Fred's guys might have to put up new drywall.
Sure.
And over here, if you take these windows out, we have to restud around those and put drywall up and all that. So
yeah, no, I was just curious.
And I like to do as cheap as I can too. Believe me, I'm not thrilled about spending a lot of money, but when you start doing the things, I can tell you, like my neighbor's in the carpet business, so a square yard of this in these things is $31 cost, just for the carpet.
Yeah.
So, and obviously there's other carpets that are cheaper, but, if you're in a high-use area like we are, it doesn't have to be this, but you're not going to get one for $10 a yard.
Right.
That's going to last.
Yeah.
So, if we look at it that we're going to wait another 40 years to redecorate, if we put it in those terms, it's not quite as expensive. But I'm willing to do, I can't speak for Lori because she'll always speak for herself, but we can do whatever you want. But if we're going to move to the next step, you guys and girls have to decide where you want us to go and how much you're willing to spend. Our proposal is $50,000 for next year. Barry thinks that that's available in the Building and Land Fund right now, or will be.
We're going to use that for Mr. Comstock?
We're going to add it. If the council says 50,000, we would be adding it to the proposed budget, but there would be funds to make sure that between the fund balance to make sure about that.
Okay. Mr. Banger.
Thank you. I'm all for this in spirit, and my assumption would be, we have a sheet with some details, And my assumption would be when it actually comes back in the form of here's what we're actually doing, it'll have a more, I guess, a tighter scope and some actual firm numbers. And at that point, I imagine we could probably either bring it back to the cow for us to, just like with the stone walls, to approve, or bring it in front of the council for a vote on the expenditure. So like I say, I'm all for it. It's a proposal of $50,000, but I'm assuming it's going to come back in a little more tightened form with some actual details. And probably, like they mentioned, this is not what it's going to look like. So before we spend this money, I guess I would be interested in what their proposal of what it's going to look like is. So I'm all for it in spirit. And
So to go along with that, we would obviously, if it's more than 10 grand, we have to get approval from the council to buy it. So anything over that. But I guess the decorating things we can start working on without, Barry could sign off on some of the things that are not going to be $10,000. I mean, with the labor that the Public Works can eventually offer us, we could redecorate pretty easily under that budget, I
And I
think.
think what Alderman Kennon's also saying, like the chair, that's really simple once Public Works starts doing it. The divider, it's a unicorn thing, so it'll come off really quickly. So some of those are going to be really nominal. It's really just the labor. It's just when you get into the painting, and do not ask me for colors, but other people are going to have to decide on what colors they actually wait. And I think that Assistant to the City Manager, Lori Cezak, and Alderman Cannon have actually said, when we get into talking about squares and everything else, that will be down the line on some of the other phases, because again, if you change things too dramatically, then what happens with some of the items that we have at this point in time? And I know I'm bringing up one other thing that we talked about. Obviously, in the room right now, we have, for years, that honor roll elected officials was stored in Public Works. And probably 8 years ago, maybe, it came back over here. And that's another question that down the line, thinking about part of, and again, I will just say my comment as I had the discussion, like to actually move that out of this area because we're going to put more pamphlet holders and other things. Like to put it somewhere maybe outside in the hallway or somewhere where more people can see it, compared to it's buried in the council chambers, and we only brought it back some years ago because at that point it was completely buried out of this building. So that's just more just for plate setters for some of the other phasing as it comes up.
And just to go along with everything that's being said here, so like the first 8 items, I think we could probably get them done for less than 10 grand is my opinion. I don't know, I can't promise that at the moment, but I think, most of this stuff is decorating items. When we start getting into the, draperies and carpeting and the dais and a new one of these things with wireless mics on it and stuff, we're talking about a lot more. Like those last 2 items on the bottom, subcontractor work, the dais, we're thinking it might be $30,000. A new one of these things is anywhere from, what, 4 to 6? So for a podium. Well, I think it's, yeah. Well, there's, as you know, John, there's all kinds of things you can do.
We don't spend that kind of money on a podium.
Well, whatever. So, everybody has their opinions about what you can spend on, and I'm open for that. But at least we're trying to move this thing forward. And if people want to give their opinions, we'll try to work with it with best we can. Nothing's locked in stone.
Are there more questions or comments? Mr. Gallo?
I am completely in favor of this, so I don't want anybody to misread me, because I do. But so these first 8 items, not including the bottom 2 subcontractor items, the priorities, explicitly the priorities, or are we able to refine this and then get some free estimates and see where we stand with a rough estimate based on the concept that we don't necessarily have an idea of what we want specifically for a backdrop and things, but starting to get some numbers coming in based on what we can do. And if we prioritize 5 of these and then we realize that we still have a lot of finances available, then we can add 3 more. If we see 5 of them and we realize we're quickly running out of money, we can then reassess which ones take a priority.
Well, like I say, I think the first 8 we can do for under 10 grand, I think.
Well, if Mr. Gale does finish, okay.
But I guess what I'm looking for, Mr. Mayor, is I guess I'm looking for just general approval. I think our city manager can approve things up to $10,000 without actually coming back to the thing, but I want people's buy-in. Do we redecorate the place, or are you comfortable with the way it is?
And I think what he's also asking is, and again, the straw vote for putting $50,000 into the 2018 budget.
Well, actually, there could be two questions there. One is just a straw vote for you to go ahead with the first 10,000. And then the second straw vote is, do you want to spend more than 10,000 and put 50,000 in the budget?
And even the 10,000 would have to be in the 2018 budget, but just clarification.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So the first one is, you have 8 items there you believe that could be done under 10,000?
I believe so.
All right, let's have a straw vote of the council who would like to go forward with just spending the 10,000 and doing the 8 items that are a priority. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Can I vote for myself?
Yes, 6. Okay. Okay, 6. Second straw vote is exceeding 10,000 and spending 50,000.
Mr. Mayor, I don't pretend to say I'm
Okay.
giving you an exact number. We think from the research that Lori's done with a professional that's in the industry, we think we can do a dais and a new thing for somewhere around 35-ish. But we don't know that. We're a little bit nervous to say that number because we can't
Okay.
promise that till we do
Well,
some more research.
Well then, okay, so the second straw vote is, will the council give direction to, you want an amendment to the budget, put in the budget item for building?
At this point in time, if the straw vote is to put $50,000 into the budget, we will use that as budget direction. And then in the final budget, there will be a $50,000 council chamber phase 1
Okay.
remodeling.
All right, so all in favor for the council straw vote, go ahead with 50,000? 3. Opposed?
I'm opposed
One.
at this time. Yeah.
Fails for
Did you vote?
I voted. I have
3,
my hand
4,
up.
but we don't, no majority, correct? So
I won't go 50. I'll go last, but I won't go 50.
it was 3 to 1, a majority.
I don't know, did the 3 include Mike?
Yeah.
Mike,
I
yeah,
don't-
Mike, so.
Could you do that again? Because you voted yes. I had 4, but.
You voted yes, Mike voted yes. You voted yes? Okay, so it's 4
Okay.
and 2 opposed. Or-
And just for the people who opposed it, we're not promising we're going to spend 50 grand on those 2 items. We'll try to get it done. And obviously, you're going to vote on it before it's approved. So we want everybody's buy-in. We don't want just one person to make the decision.
Mr. Crumstock, are we all done with put a can in this?
We are done for all 6 items that were for the committee of the whole.
Motion to adjourn? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're out of here.
Thanks for your help.